The story begins with a beautiful girl lying on a bed. She tells her viewers in a joyful voice that she thanks them for their continued support. The dead protagonist lay at the table near the monitor. Police officers stood around him, inspecting the scene of his death. A 30-year-old man named Muji died of a heart attack due to a surge in blood pressure. He was watching a video after several days of continuous work. Muji, after a sudden death in his world, was transferred to the human world. A girl with gray hair hugged the guy from behind. She told him in an angry voice that her powers allowed her to sense anything. The stranger was glad that the main character appeared before her. The stranger placed her hand on the boy's head. She told him with a smile that he could become her follower. She promised to reveal to him all the secrets of the Heiwan. The cult founder looked at the boy with red eyes. She slyly told him that he was very talented. The girl from behind grabbed the protagonist's cheeks with her hands. She demanded that he follow her instructions precisely. The future of the cult was in his hands. 10 years passed unnoticed during the main character's detailed training. The protagonist sat on his knees in a dark room. He told the master that he had already disappeared and had been gone for 6 months. The mentor could have run away to seduce some rich man, or she simply didn't want to see him. Muji said in a cunning voice that after the disappearance of the teacher, the seal was removed, and he could finally go out into the world. He decided to return the cult to its former glory. The protagonist joyfully descended the mountain. He was the only male in the cult. Now all of Heiwan's hope rested on his shoulders. The protagonist felt like the king of all the protagonists in the new world. Gradually, he was able to achieve the Tao. Mu could only merge with the Tao after achieving enlightenment. But achieving this was not so easy. Each participant who has walked this path chooses unity with heaven. This is the very will of the world. The blessed heavens can become what are called children of fate. But the protagonist didn't want that for himself. He could carve out a unique path for himself, unlike others. Now everyone knew him as the master of this path. A group of angry armed warriors stood before the protagonist. Someone shouted that the boy had led his entire family astray. Another fighter shouted that Muji deserved the most miserable death. The protagonist stood on the road near the temple. He calmly explained to the guests that he had not forced anyone to become his follower. He told the fighters in an angry voice that they could join him. Anyone who repents of their words can follow him. The warriors got angry when they heard such words from the guy. They decided that he was insolent. The boy soared high above the ground against the backdrop of the sunset on the square. His punished guests knelt before him. Mu asked his master for forgiveness in flight. He explained that his students were very stubborn. Suddenly, a bright, glowing lightning bolt appeared right in the sky in front of the main character. Gradually, the lightning in the sky began to become brighter. Mu looked carefully up in front of him. The protagonist saw a magical girl appear before him. He angrily told her that almost the entire world worshipped him. The warrior flew through the dark skies. There were very bright flashes near her. The magical stranger demanded that the boy obey her. This was his destiny in this world. Mu gestured to the stranger. He angrily told her that his teaching was putting her own existence at risk. The warrior listened to the boy's words with displeasure. At that moment, portals opened in the sky near her. The warrior, amidst the bright radiance, shouted for the children of fate to punish the heretic. Mu looked at her calmly. The protagonist fought against the heavenly spirits for 100 days and nights. He was extremely exhausted. The warrior launched a bright magical arrow at the main character with her own hand. He didn't have time to defend himself from the heavenly stranger's shot. The heavenly arrow pierced his heart. The dying boy asked his master for forgiveness in a weakening voice. The mentor appeared next to the main character. She slyly asked him, "Is he really dying?" The girl hugged the protagonist from behind. There was a bright glow. She told him that he had proven himself in this life. Suddenly, a very bright explosion was heard on the ground. Lightning flashed all around. The heavenly stranger hovered above the earth. The heavenly warrior threatened the guy that she would find him anywhere. He wouldn't be able to hide. A bright explosion resounded in the dark sky, and the glow spread in all directions. The protagonist came to his senses. He opened his eyes and saw unfamiliar girls around him. They called him Master and looked at him with fear. Muji opened his eyes. He looked at the strangers in front of him in surprise. The girls were overjoyed that the boy opened his eyes. One of them shouted to the master that he looked as if he had already died. The main character in red clothes sat down and looked in front of him with great surprise. Mu sat in an unfamiliar room surrounded by girls in colorful clothes. He thought that he had been reborn again in a strange place. The strangers were sitting next to the main character on the floor. They were glad that he was okay. Mu couldn't figure out where he had moved to. The boy glanced at his hand. He thought with displeasure that this time he had been transferred to an adult body. One of the strangers in blue clothes suddenly began to crawl towards her master. The girl sat around the main character. They hugged him and shouted that he should trust them. Mu remained silent. He felt a powerful swirl in his head. Memories of the body's previous owner filled his mind. His predecessor was a man and an only child. He was the most prominent man in the Tangshuan. The protagonist's predecessor died at 18. He overextended himself with beauties. The strangers around the main character looked at him with predatory and greedy glances. Mu remembered that he needed complete harmony between partners for his sensual Tao. The main character in the room suddenly jumped to his feet. The girls around were very surprised. Mu looked sternly at the strangers with a burning gaze. He told them that they needed to finish. He suddenly collapsed onto the carpeted floor, exhausted. The strangers around him were very surprised. The protagonist reached out to his broken face. He remembered that in his past life he had experienced a lot, but here he found himself in a fragile and incapacitated body. The boy was surrounded by dark energy. His body, even after being pulled back from the afterlife, refused to function. The stranger slyly told the master that they wanted to help him overcome his fatigue. Bright lightning bolts appeared near the guy's hand. He decided to deal with the three girls. The three maids were very scared. They saw how the master in front of them became very huge. The protagonist swung his hand sharply. He was able to throw the unfamiliar girls aside. The frightened and beaten maids lay on the ground. The girl, frightened, asked the master where he got such strength from. At that time, he was heading for the exit. The protagonist thought for a moment. He remembered the words of the Master of Heaven. The girl had threatened to find him, no matter where he hid. The boy silently decided that in this body, he would be a weak fighter. Suddenly, a system window appeared in front of the main character. Activation began. Mu extended his hand forward toward the system window. He happily said that this was what he had been missing all along. The protagonist pointed his finger at the system window. He remembered that he had once been a celebrity. He decided that this would give him an advantage in this world. The owner was surprised when he saw through the window that he would have to play the role of cannon fodder. Mu thought deeply. He didn't understand why he needed to be cannon fodder. From the comics in his past life, he knew he was supposed to be the main villain. The system clarified for the owner that he would be the villain's friend. The guy said in a disgruntled voice that Muji-an's character wasn't up to par with the main character. The system informed the owner in the window that his aura was making him a scapegoat. The boy read in the red window that he had an exceptional ability to convert spiritual energy. He was surprised to find that he had acquired traits typical of a more prominent character. The disgruntled protagonist didn't understand whether this was any use. The main character reminded himself that he lost in his past life because the children of fate took him by force. The protagonist decided that in this world he would deal with his rivals before they joined the heavens. Mu said to himself in a dreamy voice that the chemistry of love, combined with the mastery of the sensual Tao, could be the perfect tool for defeating the children of fate. The main character was walking along the path. He was in very deep thought. As he walked, he dreamily said to himself that he would be equally glad to see any of the children of fate who would join him. The protagonist looked up with sparkling eyes. He shouted that he would take back from the heavenly everything that belonged to him. The guy suddenly grabbed his face with his hand. He noticed that there was blood coming out of it. Mu pressed his hand to his face. He knew that in this body he couldn't maintain the spell for more than a few seconds. The guy heard someone's voice from the side. The woman shouted at the guest that they don't serve girls here. The short, bespectacled owner yelled at the client that she couldn't stay there. The girl said joyfully that she had already found the one she wanted. A stranger with purple hair appeared. She angrily called the main character by his name. The hostess turned to the master in surprise. He noticed that the guest opposite him treated him very kindly. The protagonist looked angrily at the purple-haired girl. He decided that she would belong to him. Muji stood and studied the girl in front of him with a very attentive gaze. The protagonist knew that Bai Ruaki was the eldest daughter of the Bai family. In the city, she was considered one of the most beautiful girls. Mu thought to himself with displeasure that the former owner of his body had been stalking this girl for so long. Ultimately, the guy decided he should be friendlier with Bai Ruaki. The protagonist asked the guest why she was looking for him. The girl suddenly pulled out a blade. Josie rushed forward at the guy with an angry look. She shouted that Mu was a scoundrel. The protagonist realized with displeasure that his rival was unstable. He decided to pretend to be calm. The protagonist asked the girl in surprise, "What did he do to displease her?" Josie held the blade to the guy's head and shouted that he was pretending to be a fool. The girl waved her weapon in all directions. She told the protagonist about the disputes between the Bai and Huang families. Josie informed the protagonist that competitors had hired a man to attack her father on his way out of town. The girl continued to hold the magic sword near the boy's head. She reported that her father had been seriously wounded. Their entire family was left without a leader. As a result, she was forced into marriage as a symbol of the family union. Mu thought about it. He realized that the owner of his body could really do something like this. The protagonist started watching memories. The man told him with a smile that if the Bai family went bankrupt, the girl would end up in his hands. The boy happily told Mr. Gongsan that he was absolutely right. Muji thought to himself with displeasure that he already saw ominous signs above his head. Josie shouted at the guy in an angry voice that she would rather die with him than marry him. The girl stood and held the blade near the guy's head. He noticed that she was shaking a lot. Mu looked very carefully at his rival. He saw no intention to kill him in her eyes. The protagonist glanced at the girl. He decided to calm her down. At that moment, Josie swung her blade wide. The opponent swung her blade with all her might and pierced the guy's shoulder. The protagonist thought such attacks would be harmless for him. Suddenly, the main character's body felt a very strong pain. Mu could barely restrain himself from screaming. He realized that it was very painful for his body to receive this blow. The girl looked at the guy in fear. She didn't understand why he was still standing. He told his rival in a disgruntled voice that he was using this situation to destroy all hope for her family. Even if she killed him, it wouldn't change anything. She could end up being punished or even killed. Josie looked angrily at the protagonist and said that they couldn't change anything anyway. Mu explained to his partner that there was still one option. He smiled slyly at the girl and told her to spare him. In return, he promised her to overcome the crisis. The girl pointed at the guy and asked with concern, "Will he really help them?" He explained to his partner that he was just being manipulated. The protagonist told the girl that the Huangongsan alliance had caused her a lot of problems. They wanted to drag him into it too, to ensure liquidity. Josie looked at the main character with great surprise and interest. The protagonist looked closely at the girl. He told her that they would solve this problem as long as they were allies. Josie studied the guy carefully. She noticed that he seemed to have changed. Mu looked at the girl. He noticed that her facial expression had changed. Josie shook her head in all directions. She didn't believe that the guy could have changed. He approached his partner closely and explained to her that he wanted to ask her for something in return for her help. Josie studied the protagonist carefully. She decided that he had some kind of designs on her. Mu told his astonished partner that he wanted to get performance-enhancing pills from her. The protagonist knew that the pills accelerated the absorption of spiritual energy and improved cultivation. With their help, he could achieve chi purification in this body. The protagonist told the girl that he had recently felt a desire to improve himself. Josie reminded the boy that the pills were very valuable. The surprised hostess watched their conversation from the side. After a short pause, the girl told the protagonist that she agreed. She apologized to him for being rude. Josie headed for the exit. She told the guy that she would ask her mother for pills. The rest was up to him. The protagonist watched the girl leave. To him, she looked like a typical supporting character. For him, he needed to find children now. The guest suddenly stopped at the door. She wanted to say something to the guy before leaving. Josie turned around and reminded the protagonist that he had a duel with Mr. Ye Yu in the Longsho Forest in 3 days. The main character was very surprised when he heard such words from the girl. Mu activated the memory download in his body. He told Master Ye that he agreed to a duel. If he won, he would take Bai Ruaxi's girlfriend for himself. The protagonist realized with displeasure that the former owner of the body could have left him with a lot of problems. The protagonist arrived at the Mu family's mansion. An old man greeted him inside and told the guest that he was very early. Mu walked along the path and explained that he was tired and decided to go back. The old man glanced at the boy and said that his shoulder was injured. The protagonist, smiling, explained that he needed to get new clothes. Mu turned around and glanced at his grandfather. He thought to himself that this old man was simple and honest. He was currently in the process of spiritual purification. He was somehow saved by the protagonist's father. Since then, he had served the family. Very soon, the old man turned into an overprotective grandfather. It was he who raised the main character, not his parents. Mu was deep in thought. He could not recall the images of his father and mother. The protagonist turned around and told his grandfather on the run that he had met the eldest of the Bai's daughters on the road. He agreed to help her with her problems. The old man asked the boy in surprise, Did he really just come back like that? He told the old man in a proud voice that he would no longer waste his life on these base desires. The boy wanted to rise above these base desires. The grandfather was very happy. He shouted to the boy that he understood it. Mu turned to the side. He joyfully told the surprised grandfather that he needed a means to strengthen his body. It could have been stimulating pills for self-improvement. The old mentor thought joyfully to himself that the moment of enlightenment had come for the master. The grandfather turned around joyfully and ran across the room. The protagonist thought to himself that the Mu family's wealth surpassed that of any other family in the city. The youngest head of the family grew up without parents. Mu decided to himself that he himself still had a long way to go. Despite the fact that they had a similar upbringing, a girl was waiting for the protagonist in the corner of the room. She angrily told him that he had run out of reasons to hang around and decided to go back. The main character's maid was named Wei Mengzhou. She studied him carefully with her eyes. The main character was very happy. He looked at the girl in front of him with admiration. He saw that the maid was looking at him with disdain as if he were a cockroach. This was a very new experience for him. The main character happily thought to himself that it was a great achievement that he could get himself a maid. The girl Wei Mengzhou was in the spiritual purification stage. She became the protagonist's servant after numerous invitations from his mother. He hired her as a bodyguard. Wei was very cold and aloof, but the protagonist used every chance to win her over. The maid felt nothing but contempt for her master for many years. Mu came up to her. He said with a smile that he just wanted to apologize to her for his past rudeness. The maid glanced slyly at the boy. She told him in a displeased voice that it wasn't only the old man who wanted her to treat him more warmly. He put his hand to the surprised girl's face. He sternly demanded that she continue to consider him trash. The maid noticed a wound on the protagonist's body. She told him with fear that the girl hadn't meant to kill him. Mu realized that it was his maid who had told Bai where he could be. Wei suddenly pulled out a small knife in her hand. The guy looked at her with fear. The girl held the blade in front of her. She shouted that it was a big mistake on her part. The protagonist reached out and tried to stop her. Mu was sitting on the floor in the room. A girl next to him was bandaging a wound on his hand. The maid told the master that she was putting him in danger. Wei looked seriously at the protagonist. She told him that it would be better if she were in his place. Mu told the servant in a cunning voice that he appreciated her loyalty. Wei accused her master of deliberately allowing the girl to harm him. The protagonist felt awkward and fell forward onto the maid's lap. Wei looked at the guy with displeasure. She suggested that he change the subject. The protagonist lay on the girl's lap. He thought he had a helpless face. The girl continued bandaging the gentleman's wounds on the floor. The boy told her that tomorrow he would need her help in improving himself. Wei responded with a dissatisfied voice that his enthusiasm would not last long. The protagonist, his body bandaged, sat on the floor and studied books. He thoughtfully said that the body's previous owner had been very strange. Mu read in the directory the area where he was now located. It was the Eastern Province. The protagonist looked carefully at the book. He thoughtfully told himself that new locations might not appear in the plot even until the very end. The main character was completely engrossed in reading a book. At that moment, a cloaked stranger appeared next to the shelf. He thought to himself, frightened, that according to the plot, he would be a friend of the villains. The stranger, dressed in dark clothes, stood behind the guy for a long time and looked at him. Then he put his hand on his shoulder. He turned around and asked the dark guest with fear who he was. The stranger, without showing his face, told the protagonist that he looked exactly as the rumors described him. Muji told his partner in a sly voice that he was a man and of no interest to him. After a short pause, the guest told the protagonist that he could help him win the duel. The protagonist was delighted. He realized that Mujuan now had a chance. A stranger in dark clothes stood next to the protagonist. He told him that he would help him win the duel. He thought about it and realized that he had to make the most of this chance. The main character angrily asked the stranger, did he really think that he couldn't win the duel himself? The protagonist boasted that he was taller than his rival from the E family. He added in a dissatisfied voice that his rival had only gotten Josie's girlfriend thanks to their childhood engagement. Mu said in a confident voice that the girl has no feelings for the guy E. When he wins the duel, no one else will be able to challenge him to get Josie. The protagonist thought with displeasure that he was now behaving like a third-rate villain. The stranger raised his hand. He told the master that in this world there are other worlds besides cultivation. The partner told the protagonist that the stars could align favorably and give him the opportunity to defeat a stronger opponent. The protagonist thought that the children of fate had a habit of shouting all sorts of heresy to become stronger. He decided that the stranger opposite him belonged to the children of fate. The partner said that his opponent would use him to test his strength. The main character rushed to the warrior and began asking him for help in a frightened voice. The stranger explained to the protagonist that he wanted to get something from his rival. Their interests intersect. The fighter told the protagonist that the duel would take place outside the city in the Longsho forest. It was necessary to ensure there were no witnesses. The protagonist told the fighter in a frightened voice that he could turn his opponent into mincemeat. The fighter explained to the guy that once he took what he needed from her, the protagonist would have enough strength to deal with his opponent in that state. The frightened protagonist told his partner that the rival could kill him before he could do anything. He needed protection. The stranger handed the protagonist a needle. He said it would help the boy calm down. Mu took the needle in his hand. The fighter turned his back to the guy. He told him to make sure everything would be clean on the day of the duel. No one should disrupt their plan. The stranger stopped. He thought that he would have to rely on this stupid guy after all. The protagonist was surprised to see the fighter in front of him disappear into space. Mu remembered that the man in black told him that he would take everything his rival needed from him. After that, he would no longer pose a danger to him. The main character immediately remembered the battle and the aura of the heavenly Tao. A maid suddenly appeared from above. She told the main character that he was pretending not to know anything. He slyly asked the girl, did she really notice? The protagonist slyly told his partner that he was just chatting with a stranger. Wei explained to her master that his opponent would be very strong. She could not guarantee his complete safety. The maid promised the protagonist that, together with her old husband, they would be able to capture the opponent. Mu demanded that the girl simply try to find out who the fighter was. He looked closely at the maid hanging upside down. He said he had seen this before. In the evening, inside the Bai family, the fighters came to talk to the girl. The stranger angrily told the girl that there was no point in her continuing to fight. Her family had to sell everything to pay off their debts. Josie held a huge, sparkling blade in her hands and looked at it carefully. The warriors around laughed maliciously. The unknown fighter told the girl that her treasury and estate would not be enough to cover the debt. The guy predatorily extended his hand to his mistress's head and said that she was the only valuable thing in their family. Bai angrily told Gongsan to get out quickly. She explained that Mu Xian had agreed to return to their 12 stores. After that, she hit him with her hand. Gongsan flew aside. He told the girl in an angry voice that Xian had wanted to have fun with her for a long time. He would not miss his chance. After this, unfamiliar fighters stretched out their hands from all sides to grab the girl. A whole group of strangers ran up to the girl from behind and started grabbing her with their hands. Gongsan angrily told the mistress that their servants were extraordinary people. Each of them had already achieved a sense of essence. The girl tried to fight off her attackers. She angrily yelled at them to back off. Bai screamed very loudly and angrily. She threw the warriors far to the sides. The hostess angrily told the guest that it was none of his business whether Xian had deceived her. Gongsan very unexpectedly grabbed a gun and shot the girl in the leg. The wounded hostess collapsed to the ground. The guest angrily told her that foreign firearms were effective against spiritual practitioners. The guy stood with a gun in his hands. He told the girl that the weapon was perfect for people like him. He accused the girl of being one of the best practitioners in the city and having reached the 5th stage of spirit essence. Joxy glared at the guy. The stranger told the girl that if she had reached the stage of Kai purification, the bullet would not have left a scratch on her. The girl was lying on the ground. Gongsan told his fighters to take action. Gongsan glared at the girl. He reminded her that just a couple of days ago they were equal in strength. The main character and his maid unexpectedly fell from a height to the side. Mu was lying on the ground. His maid was standing next to him. He angrily asked Gongsan why he hadn't invited him. The fighter turned around and said in an angry voice to the protagonist that he was trying to break the stubborn girl. The main character found the strength within himself and prepared to get to his feet. Mu said to the fighter in an angry voice that he was interested when he saw what he was doing to Josie. Josie lay frightened on the ground. She called out to the protagonist in a tired voice. Gongsan hugged the protagonist and said that he just wanted to make things easier for him. The main character took the warrior by the head with his hand and pulled him towards his side. Mu managed to very quickly prick the poisonous needle into the surprised fighter's face. The frightened boy screamed very loudly. The poison from the needle began to flow through his body. After being severely poisoned, Gongsan could no longer stand on his feet. He fell dead to the ground. The fighters around were very scared. They started calling for their master, Gongsan. The warriors around suddenly rushed at the protagonist. They demanded that he return their master. Wei jumped up sharply. She rushed forward towards the warriors to attack them. The maid jumped high into the air and swung her leg to attack the fighters. Wei threw the fighters to the sides with very powerful and strong blows in flight. The defeated warriors lay on the ground. The protagonist greatly admired his servant. Mu headed off with his companion. He told her that she could be relied upon in such situations. Wei told the guy that he could call her if he needed her. Josie lay on the ground in surprise. She realized that she had been saved. The main character stopped and turned around. He decided to approach the girl and help her. He picked up the surprised owner in his arms. He explained to her that this was the first step toward helping her family. Josie looked at the guy incredulously. She couldn't believe that he could really change so much. The protagonist looked slyly at the girl. He needed her to get to the Children of Fates. Miss Bai alone wouldn't be enough. The protagonist asked the maid how the girl was feeling. Wei was holding her master's cloak. She said the patient had been bandaged and sent to the guest room to rest. The maid told the boy that the girl's wounds would heal in a week. She asked the master if she should be sent back to the Bai family. The protagonist joyfully spread his arms wide across the room. He explained that if the Gonsai family found the girl again, it would be dangerous for her. The maid saw a small golden pill in the master's hands. She asked what it was. Mu explained to the maid that once the pill was fully absorbed into him, he would be able to successfully break through to the Qi cultivation stage. The protagonist glared at his maid. He thought to himself that he would have a good workout with her. Wei figured out her master's plans. She slapped him with her hand and shouted at him not to even try. Mu prepared to swallow the medicine. He felt that the pill was of high quality. The protagonist felt a powerful fire inside his body. He immediately felt a large amount of Qi energy pour into his abdominal cavity. The boy felt a bright fire within him. He thought joyfully to himself that everything would now be as it was in the Dantian, and that it was all luck. The protagonist was surprised to notice how aroused he was. A surprised maid stood at the side. Wei looked at his master with great anger and displeasure. Mu felt embarrassed because of his excitement. Wei looked angrily at the guy and said in a dissatisfied voice that all this was disgusting. The protagonist felt very embarrassed by his maid's gaze. He became even more excited. The frightened guy asked the maid why she didn't go to Danton. The maid turned around and slapped the guy across the face. She told the master in a disgruntled voice that if he could change, it would be a miracle. She decided to go and guard Miss Bai. Mu looked at the front door. Because of his ability, all elixirs and miracle cures were stored inside him after taking them. He couldn't use them. The protagonist thought to himself that his body was initially worthless. He didn't want to please others and end up with nothing himself. Mu remembered that he was the man who, in his past life, bore the name of the Lord of the Secret Road. He had a chance if he combined his innate abilities with the Secret Road. The guy cunningly decided to himself that he would find the right person and check if this was really true. The next morning, the boy woke up in his estate. A maid came to him. Wei told her master that the news had been spreading since early morning. People learned that Mu, in order to protect Ruaki, had drawn the sword and killed Gongsun Zan. The protagonist joyfully spread his arms out to the side. He said in a cheerful voice that his image in the city had now become even more majestic. The maid told the master that people were saying that two hooligans were fighting like dogs, and it would be better if they both died. Mu was unhappy because people spoke so bluntly. The maid warned the master that Gongsun Shun would want to avenge his son and would demand enormous compensation. The maid glared at the boy. She told him to hide behind her when he felt threatened. The main character slyly told the girl that he would definitely hide behind her. A man approached the house. He sternly demanded that the boy come out. Wei slyly whispered to her master that Gongsun's father had arrived. The protagonist slyly told the girl that they would go with her to meet the guest, but they would not pay compensation. The head of the Gongsun family, named Shun, shouted at the protagonist that he had killed his son and hidden his body. The old man came out to the front door. A girl with a gun stood next to him. The grandfather said angrily to the guest that he had intruded into Mu's house. Jun became angry when he saw the girl in front of him. He was unhappy because she was hiding in Mu's house. Wei told the man to calm down. She explained that the gentleman's death was not as he described it. Jun angrily extended his hand forward. He asked the girl why he should trust her. The guest threatened that Ruaki would not be able to sleep peacefully under the protection of Mu's house. The man raised his hand and a bright lightning bolt appeared above him. He shouted to the girl that someone must answer for the death of his son. Jun looked angrily at the old man. He suggested that they measure their strength against each other. The grandfather looked angrily at the guest with burning eyes and said that he was ready. The main character ran up to the old man's aid from the side. The grandfather turned to look at him in surprise. The main character, feigning tears, fell to his knees in front of the man. He shouted that he was very afraid. Jun angrily told the guy that the whole city now knew that it was he who killed his son. Mu, with tears in his eyes, told the man that an unknown thief killed his son in order to frame him. Jun looked around in great surprise. He couldn't figure out where the thief could be. The man saw a young servant in the soul cultivation stage before him. He realized he was in for a rough time. The protagonist continued to justify himself to the man on his knees. He shouted that the house of Mu could not have hidden such an incident in the city. Jun thought about it and realized that the guy couldn't be the killer, but he didn't want to know the truth. The man told the protagonist that his son had died unjustly in the Bai house. This couldn't be left untreated. He demanded 16 trading stalls from the Bai family as compensation for Zan's death. The maid looked at the guest with displeasure. The old man couldn't understand what the main character would do now. Mu, with tears in his eyes, shouted to the man that he was passing by and pulled out his sword to help the Bai family. The protagonist turned around. He shouted in a frightened voice to show them Mr. Gongsun's body. Suddenly, a huge coffin appeared in the courtyard. There was a dark aura around it. The protagonist pointed to the coffin in front of the man. He said that he couldn't protect Zan, but he protected him. Suddenly, the lid flew off the coffin, and inside it there was a bright, magical glow. Jun was very scared. He decided to go up and look inside the box. The man came up and looked inside the coffin. He was very excited. Jun was very shocked. He looked with fear at the body inside the coffin. Without thinking twice, the man swung with all his might and smashed the box with a powerful blow of his hand. The protagonist told the man in a frightened voice that he had barely managed to keep his body intact. Jun grabbed him by the clothes. The man explained to the boy in fear that the body had been poisoned by demonic venom. The dead body would bite the living and spread the poison. The old man looked at his hands in fear. He said with excitement that they almost made a big mistake. The protagonist said in an angry voice that only demons could wish for unrest in Tianxian. The thief was unable to kill him and the girl, so he spread rumors. The attacker wanted Jun to kill Mu and his girlfriend? Jun glanced suspiciously at the old man. He realized that if they had waited a couple more hours, the poison could have infected the Mu household as well. This couldn't have been an act. If demons had truly attacked Tianxian, then the Bai family's wealth was a mere trifle. In the eastern part of the continent of the world of 9 kingdoms, there are 2 powerful sources of power: the demon world and the eastern province. There is a large gap between them. Demonic practices often contradict human morality. People consider them apostates. The eastern province and the demon world have witnessed many wars on the continent. The man thought to himself that if he led the extermination of the great demons, he could receive a great reward. It would far exceed the wealth of the Bai family. The demons' treasures would belong to whoever destroyed them. Jun was deep in thought. The protagonist looked at him slyly from below. The boy told the man that he had failed to protect his son and should apologize. He decided to ask the head of the house, Mu, to come out of seclusion and, together with the old man and the girl, go hunting for the robber. The man in the white suit said that Dom Mu would bring him the demon's head to honor the man and his late son. Shun realized that the guy was not hiding his plans at all. Jun told the protagonist that he appreciated his good intentions and that he must personally destroy the demon. He took responsibility. The man asked the boy if he had any questions. The protagonist told the man that he was listening to him. The guest explained to the guy that he needed to do one more small thing for him. Jun demanded that the boy become bait for the thief. Mu was frightened when he heard such a request. The old man on the side warned the guy that all this could be very dangerous. He shouted joyfully to the man that he agreed. The protagonist stood on the platform. He joyfully shouted that in 2 days he would have a duel with the son of the Yi family. Then he would attract the demon. The man thought happily that the boy had turned out to be a fool. He simply wanted the Mu and Bai family members to apologize for the death of his youngest son. Now, the descendant's death was more useful than he had been in life. Jun left the Mu family's house. The protagonist approached the old man and told his grandfather that he immediately understood what needed to be done. The maid approached the guy from the side. She told him with surprise that he had already thought everything through. Mu slyly told Wei that she was a reliable support for him. He would now be able to tease Gongsun Shun. Josie asked the guy discontentedly, "Did the man really believe him?" The protagonist explained to his partner the details about all the man's sons. The information about the demon was an unexpected bonus for Jun. The girl sat in the chair. She thought that the guy's previous stupidity was theatrical. The protagonist looked closely at his guest. He asked her how she was feeling. The patient had already been given medication. but the pain from the gunshot wound was difficult to relieve. It wouldn't go away for several more days. The protagonist looked at the frightened girl. He said that the Bai family was now in danger. He couldn't let her walk around like that. The main character told the frightened girl that he could try to heal her and extended his hand to her. The girl was in the guest room. She was sitting on the bed and clutching her injured leg. Josie said in a dissatisfied voice that she still had gunpowder residue inside the wound. The main character approached the girl on the bed. He told her to take off her loose clothes. It should have been more comfortable. Josie looked at the guy in surprise. She noted that he didn't even bring his medicine with him. The girl jumped to her feet. She thanked the protagonist for his help. Then she prepared to leave and said she needed to go to negotiations with the Huang Chamber of Commerce. The main character grabbed the frightened girl by the hand. He shouted at her to wait. Josie fell to the floor in fear. The protagonist shouted at the girl to lie still. Josie looked at the guy with displeasure. She shouted at him, not to make her strain herself. He closed his eyes and grabbed the girl's hand. A bright, fiery glow appeared around him. The girl was very surprised. She didn't understand what the guy did. She felt as if her blood boiled. The girl looked at the guy and saw that instead of a head, he had a breakthrough pill. The surprised patient felt as if a warm wave had passed through the boy's hand. The pain from the wound became weaker. The lying girl looked at the guy in surprise. He held the patient in his hands. He said that she felt the breakthrough pill. Josie asked the guy in surprise, "Did he really pass on the effect of the breakthrough pill to her?" The protagonist's eyes glowed. The girl told him in a frightened voice that even close contact could lead to a breakthrough in cultivation. The protagonist explained to the surprised girl that the breakthrough pill was of no use to him either. Now he simply found a use for it. The protagonist promised the girl that he wouldn't demand reimbursement from her after the treatment. Josie told the guy with concern that such a constitution should be hidden so that people wouldn't find out. He glanced at the girl and realized that she cared about his villainous worthlessness. The main character decided to test once again what the constitution of the innate horn is capable of. The girl became more and more calm. She clasped the guy's hand with hers. Josie looked at the guy very carefully. She felt an indescribable aroma coming from him. The girl looked closely at the main character. She saw that he had an attractive appearance. Josie pulled the guy towards her and kissed him. Mu looked at her in surprise. Josie looked at the guy with great fear. She felt ashamed of what she had done. The girl suddenly came to her senses and pushed the guy away from her. She wanted to justify herself to him. Mu turned away. He explained to the girl that he knew she didn't want this. The girl smiled to herself. She was scared and didn't understand what she had done. He stepped aside and glanced at his girlfriend. He thought slyly to himself that he should have had time to evoke positive emotions in her. The main character turned around and slyly asked the girl how she was injured. Josie carefully examined her leg. She said with excitement that she didn't even have any scars. The girl happily shifted from foot to foot. She said with a smile that her cultivation had gone up a notch. Josie looked at the protagonist with interest. She said that this method of advancement in cultivation was highly improbable. He turned around and slyly asked his partner, "Does she really consider him a good person and is worried about him?" The main character sternly asked the frightened girl, "Did she really want to get the ability from him for herself?" A girl in the room next to him jumped up to the main character. She promised him that she wouldn't monopolize him. A sudden thunderstorm erupted in the sky. The protagonist and the girl looked closely. Josie told the boy with fear that the oath had taken effect. Now he should calm down. The protagonist turned slyly to the girl. He thought that she would have many scenes in the future and could say whatever she wanted. The partner turned her back to the guy. She said she was a little late and needed to go to the Huang Trade Guild. Josie explained to the boy that the Bai family had very little strength left. They needed to get something from the Huang family. The girl's father was currently unconscious. She needed to get the King of Beasts stem at the auction to cure him. The main character was very happy when he heard the words about the auction. Mu thought happily to himself that he might be able to directly obtain the Qianming Zi from the Ye clan. As a parting shot, the main character shouted to the girl that he would follow her. He was afraid that Huan would pursue her. The protagonist arrived in the city of Tangshuan at the Huang House Chamber of Commerce. The outer hall of the Chamber of Commerce contained many small rooms containing everyday goods for visitors to choose from. There was a large stage in the back hall of the Chamber of Commerce. On the first level were seats for regular shoppers. The city's noble families and regular customers were seated in the boxes on the upper floors of the hall. He put his foot on the partition. He said thoughtfully that in this place he spent a lot of money and bought unnecessary things. The main character said to himself in a dissatisfied voice that he was a stupid youth. An unfamiliar woman approached from the side. She placed a fan on the guy's shoulder and asked where he wanted to jump. The woman in the blue dress slyly asked the guy if the ladies had told him about today's lots. The protagonist turned around and looked at the stranger with a smile. He thought slyly to himself that there are many beautiful women in the world. The unknown lady was the best auctioneer in the trading house. She attracted rich young men. The protagonist looked happily at the stranger. He knew she was related to a disciple of one of the powerful imperial cultivation clans. The boy said out loud that he had come today for a rare medicine. The woman looked slyly at the guy and said that she would look after what he needed. The protagonist extended his hand to the stranger. He asked her to follow the stalk of the king of the beasts. The stranger told the guy that she would fulfill an order for him. She offered him other treasures at the auction. The main character told his partner that he would be happy to support her. The stranger turned around attentively. She noticed that someone had approached them. A girl appeared from the side. She called out to the protagonist in fear. Mu told Josie that he had already made arrangements with the Lord. The stalk of the King of Beasts would be auctioned off today. Josie looked at the woman joyfully and with a smile and thanked her. The auctioneer looked at the girl with displeasure. She studied her with her eyes. The woman looked thoughtfully at the protagonist. She thought that the guy had changed a lot. The woman glanced sideways at the protagonist. She knew he had stood up for the Bai family. That's why the guy could buy medicine for the family. The stranger watched the protagonist closely from the side. She was becoming interested. The woman stepped aside. She shouted to the guy and the girl that she would now start preparing for the auction. A guest appeared from the side of the room. He asked the auctioneer which box Mrs. Bai was in. The hostess slyly told the guest that Josie was in the box right behind her. The girl asked her friend if the trading house had really agreed to a reconciliation. The protagonist replied to his partner that the trading house didn't want to quarrel like they had with the Gongsun family. There was a noise from the side. The main character and the girl turned around carefully. A fighter named E.U. appeared in the doorway. He opened it wide and looked angrily at the main character. The main character happily thought that the fighter himself had fallen into his hands. Mu looked closely at the gentleman in the doorway. He saw a bright aura around him. He was unhappy to see the protagonist there. He promised the girl that he would protect her. Josie explained to her friend in a calm voice that she came here with Mu. The young gentleman was very surprised when he realized that the girl had come with the main character. He got very angry when he introduced his girlfriend to his husband. The young gentleman angrily asked the main character what he had done to the girl. Mu looked at the young man thoughtfully. He thought to himself that in some works the main characters came across as stupid. He looked angrily at the girl and demanded that she wake up. Josie explained to her friend with displeasure that Mu had done nothing wrong to her. He looked at his girlfriend with displeasure. He told her with concern that he was still worried about her. A voice in the boy's head told him not to waste time on empty words. There would be valuable items at the auction. They would help him improve. The stranger mentally commanded the boy to obtain the treasure. This would be his main task. He turned around. He told the girl to be careful. He went into the hall himself. He was delighted to realize that the young gentleman had been communicating with the old man from the ring or something similar. He now understood for sure that he was the main character. He thought happily to himself that if the main character was here, then there would be valuable things at the auction. The guy happily decided that now the long war was only just beginning. There were a lot of guests sitting inside the auction hall, watching the stage attentively. The host pointed to a magical object on stage. It was the Nine Heavens alchemical furnace. It cost 780 spiritual stones. The woman extended her hand forward and shouted that the lot had been sold. She congratulated the young craftsman on acquiring a valuable item. He sat in his place and looked attentively at the stage. He studied the object carefully. The main character sat to the side and carefully watched the young gentleman through binoculars. The protagonist, binoculars in hand, realized that the client had received a valuable item at a very low price. It was all thanks to the entity that lived inside the guy. The protagonist thought the client was choosing very questionable items. They were inconspicuous. The main character looked furtively at the girl in surprise. Mu stood next to his companion. He realized that she was not interested in the main character at all. Mu looked attentively at the stage. The host told the guests that the next auction lot would be announced. The host on stage told guests that the bronze fragment appeared rusty but had an outstanding origin. The woman said that the item on stage was made by a great master. The host told the guests in a sly voice that it was impossible to determine the object's exact origins yet. Its secrets would require their own research. The audience in the hall was mesmerized. They looked attentively at the object on the stage. The host told the guests that the starting price of the artifact was 500 spiritual stones. The clients were chatting among themselves. They didn't want to spend a lot of stones on the artifact. The protagonist watched the young man in the hall closely. He thought the eyes of a master of sensual Tao could not be deceived. Mu looked closely at the artifact on stage. It was the most valuable treasure at today's auction. The protagonist looked closely at the young gentleman in the hall. He knew the guy's family was rich, but he himself was not yet swimming in wealth. I thought about it and decided to myself that the main character in a book always gets what he wants. But the plot doesn't always unfold that way. The protagonist thought that if he gave the artifact to the young master, the fate of the minor villain could also change. Mu watched the guest in the hall closely. He decided to start by simply raising the price at the auction. The main character noticed with great surprise that the guy in the hall stood up and prepared to leave. A voice in the guest's head told him that he had already received enough items to increase his development. There was no need to throw money around, he said out loud in an angry voice that the protagonist was recklessly throwing money around. Mu looked ahead with concern. He couldn't understand how the guy in the hall hadn't felt the radiation from the bronze item. She turned to her companion with concern. The girl told the guy that he should buy this bronze piece. It was worth more than its original price. The girl explained to the protagonist in a stern voice that this bronze piece would bring unimaginable benefits. The protagonist explained to his partner that he could buy this junk, but it would be useless. He asked the girl what she would do next. Josie felt very shy in front of the guy. The protagonist turned away and told his companion that he was only joking. He explained that it was only a few hundred spirit stones. The main character looked carefully inside the box where the green object lay. He looked at the artifact. He thought to himself that no one could compete with him for this item. The protagonist looked closely at the antique object in his hands. A girl approached from behind. She said that she also wanted to look at this bronze fragment. Mu turned to his companion in surprise. He didn't understand how she could determine the power of this object. The main character happily handed the artifact to the girl for her to look at. Josie grabbed the ancient thing in her hands and began to examine it carefully. The girl pulled a small green object out of her pocket. She said that her talisman looked very similar to the artifact on stage. Josie looked at the protagonist. She asked him to lend her an antique item. She wanted to combine it with her talisman. The protagonist glanced at his girlfriend. He said she could take the artifact. The girl combined two ancient objects. A green aura of Tao appeared around her. The protagonist looked ahead in fear. There was a green aura around him. The main character was surprised to see an ancient legendary sword floating in the air in front of him. The blade flew across the room above the floor. The girl joyfully reached out her hand to it. The protagonist told the girl that if someone could harness the sword's power, they would be able to rival the essence purification stage. Josie handed the magic sword to the guy and told him to take it. Mer reached forward and grabbed the blade. He smiled and told the girl that she insisted after the protagonist touched the weapon. The magic blade suddenly disappeared. He was very surprised. Mu looked at the artifact in his hand with great interest and attention. The main character handed the talisman to the girl and said that it was not meant for him. He looked slyly at his girlfriend and told her to keep the artifact for herself. The girl looked at the guy with interest. She thought to herself that he had done a lot for her. Mu looked closely at his girlfriend. He realized she was the heroine of his own story. All he needed was a true protagonist. Only with the aura of such a hero could he fight the heavenly Tao itself. The guy thought to himself slyly that the girl had some kind of feelings for him. At that moment, some kind of smell came from him. Josie carefully studied the aroma around her. She remembered that she smelled the same scent when the protagonist treated her. The scent continued to thicken around the girl. She thought to herself with fear that she was becoming more agitated than before. Josie could no longer stand on her feet. She collapsed in front of the main character. The girl was lying on the floor. She grabbed the guy next to her with her hand. The main character asked his girlfriend, "Is she really feeling bad?" His girlfriend's eyes grew cloudy. He mentally demanded that the girl hold on. The main character looked at his girlfriend and asked, "Is she really feeling bad?" Josie felt very embarrassed. She explained to her friend that she tripped over something. The protagonist looked at his clouded girlfriend in surprise. He remembered that they were in a public place. The girl sat on top of the main character. She felt very scared. Suddenly, the door to the room opened and a woman ran in with a bag. She brought the protagonist what he asked for. The presenter ran into the room. She looked at the guy and the girl in surprise. The protagonist abruptly somersaulted backwards on the floor. He thanked the woman. The woman was very shocked when she saw a guy hugging a girl. The protagonist, smiling, justified himself to the guest and explained that he had wanted to suck up to his girlfriend, but she had gotten angry. Josie remained silent. She looked at the main character with displeasure and resentment. The woman slyly told the young men that she hadn't seen anything. She promised to knock on the door next time. The main character spread his arms out to the side and thanked the woman. Mu took his hostess's hand in his own and said that she had always appreciated him highly. The hostess kissed the protagonist and said that his tone had become much more pleasant than before. The woman smiled slyly at the guy. She promised him that soon he would be surrounded by girlfriends who would entertain him. He looked slyly at the hostess. He realized that she had entered the room on purpose when she heard the noise outside. The protagonist thought his body was too weak to handle this right now. It was easier for him to deal with young girls than with a woman. Josie looked at the main character silently and with great displeasure. She didn't say anything to him. The hostess told the guests that Patriarch Huan would have urgent business tomorrow, so she would be participating in the negotiations. The hostess placed the King of Beast Vine on the table for Miss Bai from the Chamber of Commerce. The protagonist asked the woman in surprise, "Does the Chamber of Commerce really want to make peace with the Bai family?" His partner explained to the guy that Boss Huang always finds a way out of any situation. The woman told the girl that regarding her father's injury, she wanted to remind her of the usual Gongsun tactics. He cunningly explained to his companion that people wanted to clear their names and make amends for their guilt. The girl told her mistress that she would accept the King of Beast Vine from Mr. Huang. She also promised that her family would settle the score with the Gongsun family. The woman replied to her partner that she was very sensible. The mistress explained to her partner that her boss was taking the unrest caused by the demon clan very seriously. The protagonist extended his hand to the woman. He thought this gesture of sincerity was very important. Mu extended his hand to the hostess and took something from her palm. The boy stared intently at the ring in his hand. The woman told the surprised boy that the fight against demons would not be easy. Everyone must put in their own effort. Inside the ring were 100,000 spiritual stones. The protagonist looked at the woman with a smile. He thanked the Chamber of Commerce for their gesture of kindness. The boy was walking down the corridor. He told the girl that Ruler Huang had always been very cunning. He had deliberately not come in person so as not to be accused of playing both sides. The main character suddenly threw the magic ring into the hands of his girlfriend. Josie stretched out her hands forward and grabbed the magic ring in surprise. Josie looked closely at the magical artifact in her hands. The boy told the girl that his family didn't need the spirit stones. She could use the artifact to help her family. The girl hugged the ring to herself. She joyfully said that the Bai family could finally rest. The protagonist smiled slyly at the girl. He said it was a small compensation he had to pay. He reminded his partner of the small favor. The next day, the main character arrived at the site of the duel in the mountains in the forest. He looked at his opponent with displeasure. He told the guy that he was late. He waited for him all night to get a chance to fight. Mu listened to his rival's words with displeasure. To him, it all sounded like he was being stalked by a yandere. The fighter grabbed his blade and rushed forward at the guy. He threatened to show him how much stronger he had become. He looked at his opponent with joy and satisfaction, realizing he had grown in just one day. Only the protagonist could break the normal cultivation rules in this way. Mu asked his opponent if he knew why they were dueling today. With a blade in his hand, he answered the guy that they would fight over Josie's girl. The young master swung his blade at the protagonist. He shouted that in a duel, strength decides everything. He already considered himself the girl's fiancé. Mu told his opponent out loud that the duel was a pretext for conversation. He wanted to invite the boy to join them in the fight against the demonic cultivators. The fighter swung his blade wide. He shouted at the protagonist not to think he could deceive him. I didn't understand why the main character opposite me was so ignorant. The girl sat on a tree branch, closely watching the battle in the clearing. Josie watched the duel on the ground. She didn't understand why Mu was so worried about his opponent. The girl looked down at the ground and was very surprised. Something worried her. Dark energy suddenly appeared above the ground. Someone was descending. He shouted in a frightened voice about demonic energy and a demonic cultivator. He asked his opponent with displeasure if he understood what he meant. A huge demonic warrior appeared from above, surrounded by a dark aura. He told the protagonist to leave everything for him. He shouted in an angry voice at his rival that he had conspired with the demon clan. The protagonist was dissatisfied. He realized that his future teammates were stupid. The unfamiliar monster continued to fly above the ground. He shouted to his rival that he had been lured here. Mu turned around with displeasure and looked at the young gentleman. He expected that he should have understood everything by now. He was already thinking. He looked at the main character with great fear. The protagonist knew that when a character encounters a powerful opponent, There's a brief fight before they're defeated. Mu made arrangements with Menjo and several other experts to hide nearby. When he's defeated, they'll rush here to help. Mu thought joyfully to himself that his opponent would have to thank him for saving him. At that moment, he fell dead to the ground. Several demonic fighters approached and lifted the boy from the ground. The warrior said with displeasure that this was all the young master was capable of. The protagonist was surprised to realize that his opponent couldn't hold out for even a second. The protagonist looked at his defeated opponent in the hands of the demonic warriors. He realized his plan had met with a serious setback. The warrior said he would take the energy of the heavenly Tao for himself. The warrior took out a small glass bottle and held it out in his hand. Suddenly, a small golden bird flew out of the exhausted guy's mouth. The bird flew away from the boy. It began to squeak in an exhausted voice. The main character looked at what was happening in front of him with great surprise. A golden bird flew into a glass bottle. The protagonist couldn't understand whether this was really possible in this world. The fighter capped the glass bottle. He realized his body was too weak to fight the demonic warrior. He needed to come up with something. The protagonist decided to try to stall for time. He asked the warrior how he liked his performance. The demon looked sternly at the guy. He told him that he was very naive. He didn't want to leave him alive. The main character, with a smile, suggested to the fighter that he make him a spy in the human world. The fighter told the frightened guy in an angry voice that he couldn't even be his toy. The warrior swung his arm. He tried to hit the protagonist with a powerful blow. The guy defended himself. The protagonist repelled the monster's attack. A bright pink explosion was heard. The sword flew off to the side. The blade flew towards the monster. He angrily asked who dared to stop him. The sword bounced far to the side. The demon from the side demanded that his opponent show himself. A girl suddenly jumped out from the side. She grabbed the flying blade and protected the protagonist. She was holding a sword in her hands. She asked the guy if everything was okay with him. He answered that everything was fine with him. The warrior angrily asked the girl how she could master the technique of wielding a sword at the stage of essence purification. The main character thought to himself that he was saved by the fact that the girl held her sword at the ready. Mu was surprised to think that the fighter was right. The girl couldn't master sword technique at her stage. The girl, sword in hand, jumped up and ran forward against the demon. Josie swung her weapon at the warrior. The fighter shouted at her that she was just a weak cultivator in the essence purification stage. The girl suddenly thrust the sword in front of her in defense. She blocked the blow. The demon angrily told his rival that she was talented and would die early. The protagonist, with tears in his eyes, shouted at the girl not to die. Josie looked ahead in fear. The girl managed to do so. She wounded her opponent with a powerful blow of her blade. After being hit by his opponent, the fighter jumped back sharply and fell to the ground. The warrior's hood flew off his head. He couldn't understand what kind of sword could have wounded him. The fighter thought to himself that he had already received the heavenly Tao, so he could leave here. The girl swung her sword sharply and wanted to finish off her opponent. The warrior turned around and started running away. The girl breathed a sigh of relief. She realized that the demon had run away. The protagonist was amazed. He realized that she had skipped 2 stages of perfection and was able to wound her rival. Something inside the guy shook very strongly. Josie stuck the sword into the ground. The girl was kneeling on the ground, hugging her blade. The protagonist called out to her from behind, frightened. A tired warrior sat on the ground. She said that even simply swinging a sword expends a lot of energy. The girl told the guy with displeasure that if her rival hadn't left, she wouldn't have been able to protect him. The main character patted the girl on the head. He praised her and said that she did well. Warriors appeared from above. Mu raised his head and told the girl to leave the rest to them. The Maidway was flying over the forest. She looked down at the people with displeasure. A group of warriors were racing across the sky above the earth. They were getting ready to land. The demon crouched down in fear, the dark aura raging around him. 3 cultivators in the spirit purification stage landed from the sky next to the fighter. The fighter saw a girl, Wei Mengruo, appear in front of him. Next to her stood the old man, Gong Sun Yun, and Elder Ren Lao. The fighter turned around and asked with displeasure what Shun was doing next to him. The man swung his arm and prepared to hit the cultivator with all his might. He shouted at the fighter that he had killed his son and he would make him pay for it. Shun rushed forward against his opponent. The guy was unable to parry his attack and jumped back. The fighter ducked in fear. He shouted at the man that he hadn't killed anyone in Tongsuan City. The man continued to beat his opponent. He shouted at him that the poisoned needle from his son's body was exactly like his body's aura. The warrior became very angry. He realized that the main character had set him up. The man swung his arm. There was a bright glow around him. He decided that his opponent must be no smarter than a 10-year-old child. The demon looked closely at his rival's face. There was no sign of regret for the loss of the child. The fighter said angrily that he would no longer hold back. The dark aura raged around him. The demon opened his glass vessel. A golden magical bird appeared from it. Laos put his hand forward in defense. He told the girl that the young master told them to beware of this. Ruaki stood in a fighting stance. She said that this thing looked strange. The demon clutched the magical bird in his hands. He angrily said that leaving such a treasure in the hands of a worthless family would be a waste. The fighter clutched the magical chick in his hands. He shouted that it would absorb it. The bird suddenly flew out of the surprised warrior's hands and flew off to the side. The demon turned around. He screamed in a frightened voice for the heavenly Tao to return to him. The man was surprised when he heard about the heavenly Tao. A sudden, very loud explosion rocked the ground. The fighters jumped high into the air to defend themselves. There was a huge hole in the ground after the explosion. Lao looked down and said that it was too much, even considering that the demon was badly injured. Shun looked up high. He said that he was now more interested in the heavenly Tao, which had just flown away. The fighter suddenly jumped up from the ground. He shouted that the Tao would be taken by the one who found it first. The girl looked around in surprise. She said that the heavenly Tao had flown to where they had come. Lao glanced to the side. He said with excitement, "The young master is there?" At the edge of the forest, Josie sat next to the main character and continued kissing him. The girl looked at the guy with excitement and said that her strength had been restored. Joxie put her hand to her face. She told the protagonist that the sword was taking a lot of her strength, so she relied on duel cultivation again. The protagonist jumped to his feet. He told the girl that their friends had already dealt with the demonic cultivator. They needed to find them. He looked up at the sky in amazement. He saw a golden bird flying towards him. The golden chick flew up to the girl and circled around her from several sides. A golden bird suddenly flew up to the surprised Joshua and hid in her clothes. The protagonist was amazed. He looked at his companion with great interest. The girl inside the bright glow told the guy that she was on the verge of breaking through to the stage of Qi purification. The protagonist looked slyly at his partner. He remembered that he had thought exactly that. Mu looked at his surprised girlfriend and thought that she was the main character. The energy of the heavenly Tao that was extracted from the body of the Wu Ye fighter was attracted to Ruaki. For the protagonist, there was only one explanation. It was all fate. Mu decided to do nothing more. The energy of the heavenly Tao would come to him on its own. A stream of enormous dark aura appeared from the sky and descended upon the people from above. The battered demonic warrior began to rise again. He shouted to the people on the ground that their clan could use the skin-shedding technique. He was able to feign death once. The demonic warrior stood before the young man and woman. He angrily asked them, "Where is the energy of the heavenly Tao?" The fighter sternly demanded that his partners give him energy. The protagonist extended his hand to his partner. He said that the heavenly Tao had already chosen a new owner. The demon looked angrily at the guy and asked him, "Is the girl really worthy of this?" The fighter turned around and ran to the side. He shouted to the surprised girl that he would not be her opponent. The fighter hit the protagonist in the body with all his might. He angrily asked him, did he really think he could be his opponent? The main character was thrown to the side after the blow. The warrior also told him that he wasn't as much of a loser as he was. Josie turned around in fear. She realized that her friend was lying unconscious. After the blow, he fell to the ground and lay motionless. She called out to him in fear. The demon stood in front of the girl. He told her in an angry voice that she could not control the energy of the heavenly Tao. The girl suddenly jumped up with a blade in her hand. She prepared to fight back. The girl, in flight, swung her sword in all directions to stop her opponent's attack. The evil fighter turned away. He said that he would need to assume his original form to fight the girl. Josie turned around in fright. She saw how the warrior behind her began to transform into a huge monster. The fighter transformed into a huge purple dragon. He shouted at his opponent that she had no way out now. Josie calmly told her opponent that he could start attacking her. The girl with burning eyes angrily shouted at the dragon that he could try to kill her. The monster growled and hissed loudly. He prepared to pounce on the man. The dragon slammed his head into the ground to hit the girl. After hitting the ground, the monster stuck its head out and began to look around angrily. Suddenly, a very bright pink explosion was heard, right next to the dragon's head. The girl suddenly jumped high into the air and swung her blade to finish off the monster. After a powerful blow, Josie launched a bright pink lightning bolt in front of her. A stream of bright pink energy flew past the dragon and pierced him through. The demon was injured after the girl's attack. He didn't understand whether it was because of the heavenly Tao or because of the sword. Josie glared angrily at her beaten opponent in mid-flight. There was a bright glow all around. The girl angrily told the monster that all this happened because of her rage. The dragon was frightened. He didn't understand what had just happened to his rival. After that, the girl rushed at him from above with a blade. Josie, in flight, suddenly rushed at the demonic predator and pierced his body with a powerful blow. The dragon was seriously and fatally wounded. A bright explosion was heard near its body. The monster's body shattered into many burning pieces after the girl's attack. The mortally wounded and beaten dragon fell dead at the girl's feet. The girl with glowing eyes angrily asked the beaten demon, "Did he really have a stage of spiritual purification?" The fighter lay on the ground in a pool of dark blood. The Empress had told him earlier that he was highly compatible. Ruaki swung her blade wide. She said she didn't need the heavenly Tao if it didn't bring Muji on back to her. The battered protagonist ran up from the side. He waved his hand to stop his surprised girlfriend. Josie turned around in surprise. She couldn't believe that her friend had survived. Josie asked the guy in surprise how he had managed to survive. He pulled out several pierced armor plates from his clothes. He told the girl that after the blow, the pain immobilized him for several hours. She angrily shouted at the guy that he did all this on purpose. He slyly asked his partner, "Is this really the first time she's seen this?" It would be very stupid for him to come without protection. The girl rushed to the guy and asked him with concern if everything was okay. The protagonist closed his eyes joyfully. He felt pleasure from the girl's touch. Josie touched her friend. He was calmed by such warmth. The protagonist told his surprised partner that he needed to interrogate the beaten fighter. He approached the battered warrior and asked which empress he was talking about. He wanted to know more about her. The demon glanced at the boy with red eyes. He promised the protagonist that if he let him go, he would introduce him to the 7th division of the demonic side in the eastern province. With his abilities, Mu could become the Empress's right hand. The protagonist angrily asked the warrior, did he really want him to betray humanity? The demon angrily replied that he had no intention of negotiating with him. The monster shouted at the guy in an angry voice that if anything happened to him, the 7th division would not let him go. At that moment, he pierced his head with a blade. The protagonist finished off his opponent with a blade to the head. He said he would no longer negotiate with him. The protagonist stepped aside. He explained to his girlfriend that if he let the demon go, he would come back again. It was better to get rid of him right away. Josie confidently told her friend that she could become a target for the demon clan. They could force the Empress to come after her. She reached out to the guy's face. Mu told her that they would deal with this later. She merged with the energy of the heavenly Tao. Trouble would find her sooner or later. He looked slyly at his girlfriend. He thought that being the main character wasn't so easy for her. The villains would come for her sooner or later. The protagonist saw a bright red portal in front of him. It was a system window. The system informed the owner that his role as cannon fodder was now becoming the role of an ally of the Child of Destiny. Josie slyly hugged her friend. The protagonist couldn't understand what kind of character role this was. As the girl absorbed the energy of the heavenly Tao, the protagonist's role changed. The boy received a great reward. The protagonist received a spirit cleansing card for himself, which lasted for 1 minute. He was unhappy with its short duration. Mew reached out and took the card with a fiery emanation. He said in a cunning voice that sometimes even 1 minute might be enough for a man. The protagonist stood next to his girlfriend in a forest clearing. There were streams of fire around them. Mu told his partner that the energy of the heavenly Tao was very strong. He decided to meet with Gongsun Yune. The guy suddenly felt tired in his head. He reached out his hand to her. Josie asked her friend with concern, "Is he really feeling unwell?" Mu answered his partner in a tired voice that he was affected by demonic energy. The girl was deep in thought. She looked at the guy with great interest. She grabbed the guy's hand. She said that she now had the energy of the heavenly Tao. There was a bright glow around the girl. She told the protagonist that it should help him. He looked at the girl with interest and realized that he had to accept it. A man named Shun suddenly descended from above. Wei stood around him along with Elder Lao. Jun turned around with displeasure. He told his companions that they could not find the main character and the girl. Lao said in a thoughtful voice that Mu and his girlfriend could go deeper into the forest to discuss their plans. Shun told his colleagues in an angry voice that the heavenly Tao had disappeared. All of this is strange. Why explain to the man in a dissatisfied voice that he could not forbid others from receiving the heavenly Tao? Jun spread his arms wide. He said he wanted to know where the heavenly Tao was. Wei turned to the side and noticed a young man and woman. The main character approached his friends with his girlfriend. He was holding the mask of a defeated demon in his hands. Jun ran up to the guy and anxiously asked what had happened. Mu explained to his partner that the demonic cultivator had deceived everyone to escape pursuit. He glanced happily at his girlfriend. He said that she saved him from a demonic cultivator. He didn't stand a chance against her. The man angrily asked the guy where the heavenly Tao had gone. The protagonist glanced at his partner with displeasure. He didn't understand what heavenly Tao he was talking about. An irritated Shun reminded the surprised guy about the yellow object that could fly. Lao approached the man from behind. He said that they could talk to the corpse of the demonic cultivator for now, before his spirit dissipated. The old man extended his hand to the protagonist. He asked him to give him the cultivator's head. Lao activated a magic spell. The spirit of the dead warrior appeared before him. The old man looked sternly at the warrior's soul and asked if he knew the technique of simulating death. The spirit told the man that when seriously wounded, his clan could shed its skin once to feign death and escape. Shun put his hand on the old man's head. He angrily asked the spirit, for what purpose did he come to Tianxin City? The spirit told the people that he had come to the city to collaborate with his comrades. He wanted to seize the heavenly Tao. The man asked the spirit in an angry voice who his accomplices were and where the heavenly Tao was. The warrior's spirit thought he didn't answer the man. Gradually, he began to dissolve. The warrior's soul suddenly flared brightly and began to disappear. The people around were very frightened and surprised. Shun stared ahead in surprise. He didn't understand what had happened. Lao explained to his companion that the soul was very weak. The warrior simply dissipated. The man was dissatisfied. He shouted that the spirit had disappeared just as he was about to tell it about the heavenly Tao. The old man replied to his partner that he had overestimated the possibility of communicating with the soul. The protagonist rushed toward the man in fear. He shouted that he had almost been killed by a demonic cultivator. He didn't know what to do next. Shun looked at the guy suspiciously. He told him that the heavenly Tao had disappeared in his direction. The protagonist grabbed the man by the clothes in fear. He screamed that he almost died. He didn't need to worry about any Tao. Shun fell silent. He looked at the guy with displeasure and did not answer him. Suddenly, a bright pink stream of fire flew towards the man from the side. He jumped back in fear. Shun couldn't stop the stranger's blow. He flew to the side. The protagonist looked at him from the side in surprise. A young and huge fighter in white clothes appeared from the side. He called out to the man with displeasure. The stranger angrily asked the man, doesn't he really want to look for demonic cultivators in the city and instead interrogate children? The beaten man lay on the ground. He told Bai Buyu with surprise that he was seriously injured. The girl next to him joyfully ran to her father. The girl's father, Zhou Sibai, was the patriarch of his family. He angrily told the man that he had come today to get back at him. The beaten Shun put his hand to his body. He had a large bloody wound. The man was lying on the ground, he thought to himself with displeasure that he had been carried away by the heavenly Tao. He hadn't even noticed the buoy. Shun looked away in alarm. He thought that the girl and the old man would most likely join forces with the buoy. After this, the fighter suddenly jumped to his feet and started running away. He was clutching the wound on his body with his hand. The girl stood with her father watching the man run away. Suddenly, the fighter started coughing blood. The girl became frightened. Boy explained to his daughter that after he woke up, he immediately rushed here. The protagonist told the man that the magical medicine only brought him back to his senses. His wounds were still there. Boy said in a weakening voice that his daughter was his most precious treasure. He couldn't just sit by if she was in danger. The man bowed to the protagonist and thanked him for the medicine. He promised to repay the debt. Mu told the fighter that he could accept the medicine as an apology. The girl smiled at her father. She explained that it was only thanks to the protagonist's help that they were able to survive. The guy smiled at the man. He said he was still recovering. He suggested he come back and rest. The daughter and her father stepped aside into a forest clearing. She turned slyly and glanced at the protagonist. He turned around and told the old man that he had done a great job, which silenced the fighter mid-sentence. Lao explained to the surprised boy from the side that it was an external force that destroyed the cultivator's soul. The protagonist stopped abruptly. He felt some kind of magical aura around him, with excitement. He stood on the earth. He felt that something was wrong around him. A huge eye was looking at him from above. Mu saw a large red eye above him. He didn't want to attract the attention of the powerful beings of this world yet. At this time, she came up and extended her hand to the main character. Wee held the guy's hand. She told him with excitement that he should rest now. The protagonist told his girlfriend that she could help him warm up. The girl got angry and hit him in the face. Mu lay unconscious on the ground. An elder called out to him in alarm. The girl turned around and told the boy she shouldn't worry about him. Mu, lying on the ground, laughed loudly because of his weak body. He felt fear for a moment. The protagonist thought angrily to himself that he was a master of the sensual Tao. He was not afraid of anyone's strength or power. In the eastern part of Juzhou, there is a piece of land that belongs to the immortal Sect. The Sect is called Leani. Their residence was located high in the mountains. A girl in blue clothes stood on the balcony and looked at the mountain peaks. She was the Sect leader's disciple. Her name was Lan Muliang. 2 warriors appeared near the house. One of them said with surprise, "Did the doe really train all night?" The admirer shouted joyfully that the older sister was very talented. She was 1 step away from returning to the void. Another admiring warrior stood nearby. The doe looked down in surprise. She told herself that she had only come to have fun. The warrior told herself in a thoughtful voice that her younger comrades had been closely monitoring her every move lately. The girl looked up at the moon. She said the fighters thought she was focused solely on training, but few understood her. The doe made a small white dove out of paper and prepared to launch it. The girl swung her arm and launched a white paper bird from the balcony of the house. The doe said thoughtfully that she would not receive an answer to this letter. A girl approached from the side and told the warrior that if she wanted an answer, she should not write so cryptically. The doe turned away in fear. She greeted her master. The master stood in the darkness, wearing a long white robe. She told the girl that she could go to Tenshin City. The certification process was about to begin. Lan would be able to identify those children who could join their sect. Lan asked the master with displeasure, "Is there really no one more suitable for these purposes?" The mentor told her subordinate that she promised that she would find something interesting in the city. The doe fell silent. She turned away with displeasure and thought. After a short pause, she agreed to the master's demand. The protagonist lay on his bed, staring at the system window. His new role was as an ally to Destiny's child. He told himself that he would now have to accompany the Chosen One on his journey. He looked thoughtfully up in front of him. He told himself that he would have to suffer with the Chosen One or receive a greater benefit. A maid came up to the side and said in a dissatisfied voice to the protagonist that Ruaki had taken the heavenly Tao for herself. Wei glared at the guy. She sternly asked him how he could give away something so valuable. The protagonist looked happily at his maid. He was pleased with her disdainful look. The protagonist sat on the bed. He told the maid in a thoughtful voice that demonic cultivators were currently searching for Tao energy. He decided to help his friend Ruaki now. Wei looked at the guy carefully. She said he had become bolder to win the girl over. Demonic cultivators had been hiding in the city for a long time, and they were not weak. The maid asked the young master what he would do next once he found the cultivators. He got ready to get out of bed. He said he was ready to take a risk. The maid told the guy that he should be more collected. The girl went to the window and opened the shutters. She told the guy that he needed to air out the room. At that moment, a paper airplane flew up to the window. Wei turned around in alarm. She noticed a magical toy flying into the room. The frightened protagonist sat on the bed. He watched intently as a paper bird flew into the room. The maid ran up. She grabbed the bird in her hands in time to stop it. The girl was holding a bird in her hands. She asked the guy if everything was okay with him. He was sitting on the bed. He thanked the maid and said that he was fine. Wei turned to the side. She felt a strong spiritual energy. The girl didn't understand why someone would use a paper bird as a hidden weapon. Mu answered the maid that none of this was a weapon. The maid told the boy with surprise that no one in the city could infuse spiritual energy into the crane. The protagonist unrolled the paper bird and began to read the message. The protagonist read the piece of paper. He said it was an anonymous letter. He read the message and was very surprised. A surprised girl stood next to him. The protagonist, holding a piece of paper in his hands, laughed. He offered to read the message to the maid together. Wei told the boy she didn't want to. The girl stood. She looked impatiently at the message in the guy's hands. Wei wrapped her arms around the protagonist's side. She said she wanted to know what was written there. The maid noticed that the text was nonsensical. The girl looked at the piece of paper with displeasure. She didn't understand what was written there. The protagonist said in a romantic voice that his youth was returning. His partner glanced at the piece of paper and asked the guy, "What is he talking about?" He held the letter in his hands. He said that a young girl wanted to run away from home, but couldn't. So she wrote an abstract message. The protagonist headed to the window. He demanded that the maid give him the brush. The main character held a brush in his hands and decided to give the stranger some advice. Mu wrote a message and launched it out the window. The magical bird flew across the night sky. The protagonist happily told himself that it had been a long time since he had last talked about such light-hearted things. A girl standing to the side discontentedly told the guy that she didn't even want to see his face. The next day in Tianshuan City, the girl was sitting at home. The mistress sat in a huge bathtub in the water. She thanked the guy for donating 50,000 spiritual stones for her. Mu stood in a huge room. He told the girl that as long as she was happy, it was worth the effort. The woman got out of the bath, water dripping down her clothes. She thanked the protagonist for purchasing the goods at the auction. The hostess came up to the guy from behind and put her arm around him. She slyly asked what he wanted. Mu turned around. He explained to the lady with a smile that he was looking for demonic cultivators. The woman told the guy with displeasure that she thought he had come for her. Mu asked his partner what she knew about the demonic cultivators in the city. The guy explained that he was supposed to eliminate hidden dangers and maintain the city's security. The hostess happily told the guy from behind that the young gentleman was taking care of the city's residents. Mu slyly explained to the woman that he had helped deal with the demonic cultivator and therefore was concerned about the position of his allies. The mistress touched the boy with her hand and said that she would personally take care of this. The woman behind him informed the boy that young talents had gathered in the martial arts arena today. They were ready to compete. Mrs. Bai would be in the audience. The hostess stood near the large bathtub. She promised the guy that she would ask someone to deal with the demonic cultivators. She suggested they talk next time. Mu thanked her in return. The protagonist walked down the corridor. He thought joyfully to himself that he had remained calm, although he was on the brink of death. Mu walked down the corridor. He thought that the demonic cultivators wanted to turn this city into their base. They could already be hiding among some noble families. At that moment, someone in blue clothes walked past him. Mu was completely absorbed in his thoughts. He thought he could go to the arena and watch the fights. Some young master could disguise himself as a demonic cultivator. The guy didn't even notice how a stranger in blue clothes walked past him. The doe stopped and looked at the guy with her blue eyes. She sensed an unusual aroma emanating from him. In the martial arts arena, two warriors fought fiercely against each other. The warrior swung his leg and kicked his opponent with all his might, sending him flying far back. He looked ahead with a displeased expression, wearing a bandage on his head. He was holding a huge sword in his hands. The protagonist stood to the side and looked at the guy on stage. He thought he'd already survived the powerful blow from the demonic cultivator. They'd even managed to heal him. Mu looked ahead and thought that Wu Ye was not the main character, but he had gained much more than the others. The loss of the heavenly Tao did not matter to him. The fighter on stage turned sharply and glanced at the square. He spotted a familiar guy there. He already suggested in an angry voice to the main character that he fight him again. The protagonist slyly closed his eyes. He thought the guy had just recently lost the energy of the heavenly Tao. Now he was acting as if nothing had happened. He looked at the main character with great animosity and began to call him over with gestures. The protagonist slyly told his partner that he just came to watch the competition. He wasn't in the mood to do anything. An unfamiliar warrior emerged from the side. He told the fighters that everyone present was a practitioner. They were all seeking to join the Leani Sect. A fighter named Gongsun Chen asked the protagonist with displeasure, "Is he really afraid to fight and doesn't want to join the sect?" Mu asked the surprised fighter with displeasure. Did he really think that this would stop him? Chen glared at the boy. He decided that the Mu family was to blame for his father's injury. He decided to take revenge on the protagonist. A purple aura appeared around Chen. He shouted to his opponent that today he would show him what the world of immortals is like. The fighter suddenly jerked forward and rushed toward the protagonist. Everything around him sparkled. I glanced disapprovingly at the running fighter. He decided that before him was a typical antagonist who was starting a fight for himself. The protagonist decided that now would be a good opportunity to test his girlfriend's strength. A girl suddenly ran up from the side. She was ready to protect the main character. Josie swung her leg wide and hit Chen with a powerful and strong kick. The warrior deflected Chenya's powerful blows far away. He couldn't even defend himself. The beaten fighter lay on the ground. He couldn't understand what was happening to him. The girl glared at the warrior. She said that as long as she was here, no one would dare disturb his friend. He closed his eyes joyfully and contentedly. He thought that his main character had arrived. The two fighters turned around in amazement and looked at the girl. They called her by name. Josie sternly told her opponents that if anyone wants to fight the main character, they should fight her first. The servant handed his master a sword. Chen extended his hand forward. He angrily asked the guy, "Will he really hide behind the girl?" He hid behind his girlfriend. He said his companion would protect him. Chen, with a weapon in his hand, became very angry and surprised. He never expected such words from the girl. The main character, standing behind, happily thanked his girlfriend for arriving on time. The warrior suddenly leaped up and prepared to finish the girl off mid-flight with a powerful blow. Everything around sparkled. Chen shouted in flight that he could defeat any opponent at the spirit refining stage. He believed that his opponent had not even reached the chi refining stage. Josie calmly swung her blade. She threw her opponent far back. Chen flew back after being hit by the girl and fell to the ground. The spectators around were very surprised. Wu Ye stared ahead in amazement. He couldn't understand how any of this could be possible. Mu glanced disapprovingly at the boy next to him. He thought that after losing his heavenly Tao, the fighter's character had become more like a piece of trash. He thought slyly to himself that he didn't expect the girl to be so strong. Chen came to his senses. He raised his head and asked the girl why she chose Muji on for herself. Josie looked at the fighter with great animosity. The protagonist told his girlfriend not to get angry. The main character suddenly ran up to the warrior lying on the ground with sharp steps. The protagonist approached the battered fighter. He told him with a smile that he possessed the 8th level of the spiritual purification stage, but died from one blow. He touched the fighter's body with his hand. He offered to fight him again without the girl's participation. Chen shouted in an angry voice that he would not be afraid of a weakling. Mu warned his opponent that if he overexerts himself, he will look pathetic. Suddenly, Chen's body began to crack. Deep wounds appeared all over him. The protagonist told the fighter lying on the ground in blood that he had warned him. Mu glared angrily at the fighter with blazing eyes. He thought that with a wave of his hand, he could return his qi and blood to chaos. The protagonist turned and walked away. He thought that now everyone would be fine with him. People were screaming and asking for help. The girl asked the guy in fear what had just happened. He answered his girlfriend that she was much stronger than she thought. The protagonist looked at the girl's hand and asked if it was injured. Josie smiled and told the guy that a fighter with his skills wouldn't even be able to touch her. Admiring people looked at the protagonist from the side. They decided that he was lucky. Someone in the crowd reminded Wu Ye that Bai Roxy was his fiancée. The fighter became very angry. He looked with hatred at the stranger in the crowd. Several people stood in the tea house, watching the commotion from the balcony. A woman asked the girl what she thought about people who wanted to join the cult. Were there any worthy ones among them? Lan looked out from the balcony at the square. She said there were a lot of people there, but only one person caught her eye. The woman told her partner that she might have been attracted to the eldest daughter of the Bai family. The doe looked slyly ahead and said that she had meant a completely different person. A huge crowd of people stood in the square. The protagonist quietly taught the 4th son of the Gongsun family a lesson. Someone noticed from the side. The hostess and the girl were standing on the balcony. The woman told her subordinate that she wasn't interested in Joxi, who was stronger than all the other participants. Instead, she wanted to learn about the man she was protecting. Lan explained to her partner in a thoughtful voice that the sect leader had told her to come here for an assessment. But she knew little about those who might become future disciples of the sect. The woman slyly asked the girl, "Did she really come to her on purpose?" The doe held a piece of paper in her hands and looked at it carefully. The hostess behind her slyly said that there were several people with outstanding talents in the city. She wrote down here everyone she might like. The girl told the woman in a disgruntled voice that she didn't see the main character on the list. The hostess explained that he was a strong womanizer, so he wouldn't be on the list. The doe asked her partner with great excitement, "Has the main character really changed?" The owner slyly explained to her partner that the guy had become a different person. He even led a team searching for a demonic cultivator. The woman offered to help the protagonist. Lan asked her partner how close she was with the guy. The woman explained that she simply enjoyed dealing with interesting people. The woman told the girl with a smile that self-improvement requires a talent that only she possesses. Few can compare to her. The doe thought for a moment and looked away silently. Then she turned around and smiled at her owner. The doe handed the woman a small box. She asked her to give the boy this item to detect demonic cultivators. The woman picked up the book and put it to her head. She happily said that the girl would now help her. The hostess handed the girl a book and said that it was a gift for her. The girl glanced at the book's title in surprise. It was a collection of the ceremonial chronicles of a young lord. The owner slyly told her partner that she could find even more interesting things in the stores. The doe handed the book back to the woman. She explained that she had come there for an assessment. She hadn't had time to read. The doe looked away in fear and noticed that the woman had disappeared somewhere. The girl looked closely at the book. She decided to keep it for herself. The doe was deep in thought. She was remembering the message for the protagonist. The girl remembered that she had somehow received a response from the guy. He had mentioned to her that they were being bothered by demonic cultivators. The girl looked carefully from the balcony at the main character, but she couldn't believe it could be him. Josie approached the guy and kissed him. He asked his girlfriend how she was feeling. He was curious about how her spiritual energy was being restored. The girl joyfully shouted to the guy that in just a week she had reached the stage of Kai purification. Joxie thought happily to herself that with the energy of the heavenly Tao and the protagonist, her speed of cultivation was 10 times faster than before. The girl was very much in her dreams. She wondered what would happen if she went even further. Mu was watching his girlfriend closely from the side. She felt embarrassed because of what she was thinking about. The protagonist hugged the girl from behind. He told her that the heavenly water energy was suitable for her, but she needed to become stronger to protect herself. Josie turned around. She told the boy with concern that the demon spies had not yet been destroyed. They could be hiding among the city's large families and pose a threat. She glanced slyly at the boy. She promised him that she would become stronger to protect him. The girl hugged the main character. She asked him for a little more strength to protect him. He slyly told his girlfriend that she could take as much energy as she needed. His partner looked at him gratefully. At that moment, a noise was heard from the side. Someone entered the room. The main character and his girlfriend got scared. He smiled slyly at the girl and walked through the door into the next room. Josie told the guy with displeasure that he himself opened the door for her. He looked at his girlfriend with displeasure and asked what brought her here. The girl told the guy that she had brought him something in a box from a woman at the auction. Wei opened the box. Inside were magical lotuses. She explained that if there were demons on the side, the flowers would change color. Wei told the protagonist that if demons were nearby, the lotuses would turn black. The woman received these magical flowers from a disciple of the Leani sect at the auction. The protagonist looked happily at the flower in his hand. He slyly told himself that the woman had connections with the Yin sect. That's why she got the lotuses so easily. The protagonist asked his girlfriend to prepare a gift for the woman as a token of gratitude. They need to wait for action from the Huang and Ye family. Wei told the guy in a thoughtful voice that a distant relative had already arrived in the city to conduct an assessment of the Sect's activities. The main character slyly told his girlfriend that he was very grateful to her for helping him. Mu looked slyly at his friend. He told her that he first talked to the eldest daughter of the Huang family. The main character asked his maid to help him deal with the cousin of the Huang family. Wei told her master in a dissatisfied voice that he had finally started hunting for girls from large families. The maid told the master in a dissatisfied voice that he could not hide the scent of Josie's perfume. The girl stepped aside. She told the guy that she would not interfere in his problems. The main character told himself in a dissatisfied voice that he had an inferiority complex in relation to the Wei as a teacher and a student. Josie put her shoes next to the bed and climbed up. The protagonist approached her and said he wanted to tell her something. The guy handed the girl a beautiful white lotus. She looked at it in surprise. The girl took the flower and sniffed it joyfully. She was delighted with such a gift. The protagonist stepped aside. He told the girl that she had recently entered the QI purification stage, which is why her breathing might be unsteady. She was surprised when she realized the guy was knowledgeable about cultivation. She became distracted and decided to take a closer look at the flower in her hands. The main character approached the entrance of the Huan family building and prepared to go inside. Inside the room, a girl was beating the tied-up captives. They were screaming loudly. The beaten man's body had a lot of scars. He screamed loudly and continuously. The prisoners hung upside down from the crossbar. They were tied up. Someone asked the mistress to give them a break. The girl with the whip told the fighters that she controlled the force of the blow. The whip's material was soft, and it didn't hurt at all. The girl, Huang Manting, shouted angrily that she had no interest in playing with the captives. They had a low stamina threshold. Slug ran in from the side. He informed the lady that the eldest son of the Muji family had come to her, requesting an audience. The girl assumed the protagonist had already learned that she had decided to reclaim the money the Huang family had lost. The lady told the servant to take the guest to her office. She promised to come soon. The servant bowed to the girl and said that he would do everything. The prisoners were hanging upside down. They were glad that the guy arrived in time. He was their savior. Manton got angry. She hit the prisoners with the whip with all her might and shouted at them not to relax. The mistress turned around. She shouted angrily at the bound prisoners that they would remain hanging as punishment. She would free them when she returned. The main character sat on a chair inside the office. The girl greeted him joyfully. Mountain slyly asked the guy why did he come to her alone. The protagonist looked closely at the magical lotus. He noted that the color had not changed. The lady approached the guy. She asked him angrily, "Has he really become bored with her already?" Manting glanced slyly at the protagonist. She told him that he now wanted to play with a young lady from another noble house. The protagonist explained to the young lady that she wanted to see him in person, and that is why he paid her a visit. The protagonist showed the girl the lotus inside the box. He said he brought this gift from the gates of the immortals. Manting looked with interest at the flower inside the box. She said that such a lotus could only be found in the Leanian Sect. The protagonist slyly told the girl that this snow lotus helps in cultivation practice. It can also recognize evil spirits. The owner looked at the flower with both anger and joy. A bright aura emanated from it. The protagonist told the girl that all the major noble families in the city knew that demon werewolves were hiding somewhere. The mistress could be his best protector. Manton asked the guest with displeasure why he didn't come to her right away. The landlady angrily told the boy that he first had a falling out with the Ye family, then tried to befriend the Bai family, and in the end, nothing worked. Only now did the Huang family appear on the protagonist's list. The protagonist smiled and told his partner that he simply wanted to help the young lady. Huang Manting glared at the boy and said there was no need to help her. The girl in the center of the room spread her arms in displeasure. She told the guy that even if she killed the werewolf demon, it wouldn't add to her authority. The girl abruptly threw her whip in the guy's direction. He looked at her silently. The protagonist knew that Manting was the only daughter of the Huang family. She was spoiled but never overstepped her bounds. She had strange tendencies in her personal life. The protagonist reached out to grab the whip on Earth. He told the girl with fear that he thought it was a snake. Mu grabbed the handle of the whip. He thought the young lady was just a novice in the role of sadist. The protagonist looked at the girl from the side. He decided to give her the opportunity to feel strong. Mu activated the innate vessel in his body. He decided to try to test the girl. Manting looked at the guy with fear. A bright glow appeared around her. The hostess suddenly fell backwards, straight onto the main character's back. Mu asked young Mrs. Huang in a dissatisfied voice, "What does all this mean?" Manting glanced slyly at the boy. She couldn't understand how the arrogant young lady Bai could have become attracted to him. Mu looked at the girl's body from below with interest. He explained to her in a frightened voice that Mrs. Bai fell in love with him because she was touched by his sincerity. The girl was sitting on the protagonist's back. She told him that they all grew up in Tianchuan. Everyone knows each other here. The hostess glared at the boy. She said they needed to let their true selves out. Manting looked angrily at the frightened guy and asked if all this was true. The girl stepped aside. She was surprised to feel agitated. He rose above the ground. He asked the girl in surprise why his back was all wet. The girl was shocked. She turned to the guy on the floor, very frightened. The hostess told the guy in a frightened voice to just ignore her. Manton put her hand on the guy. She said that she couldn't let him go wet. She told the main character in a sly voice that she would help him dry off. The protagonist shyly told the girl that her hand was a little hot. Manting hugged the guy from behind and said that she used a flaming palm strike to evaporate the moisture faster. The hostess glanced happily at the boy. She saw that he had a pitiful expression on his face. The girl continued to hold her hand on the guy's back. He told her in a dissatisfied voice that all this was not good. The main character felt a very strong warmth in his body. He smiled at the girl and said that he liked her. Manting looked at the guy angrily with blazing eyes. She said something incomprehensible to him. The hostess grabbed the whip and handed it to the guy. She told him with a smile that they could add more accessories. He shyly declined the girl's offer. Manting looked at the boy happily. She said that she personally controls her powers. Her servants will confirm this. The main character told the young lady in a sly voice that she was using uninteresting toys. Manting was very surprised when she heard such words from the guy. She looked at him in amazement. The main character extended his hand to his girlfriend with the magical item and invited her to try it with him. The hostess, in an admiring voice, told the guy that he was holding a candle of the highest quality. The girl happily told the main character that when the candle burns, it not only burns but also causes dizziness. The owner was very happy and excited. She told the guy that he bought such a valuable thing just for this reason. He turned away shyly. The girl happily told the guy that she had never known he was so good. The main character glanced slyly at the girl. He said that she could try on him as much as she wanted. Manton smiled very happily and looked cheerfully at the guy. The girl held the burning candle toward the boy's body. She began dripping wax onto it. The main character was lying on the floor. Hot wax was dripping onto his body and the candles. Manton was sitting next to the guy. She was dripping wax from a candle directly onto his body. The girl sat on top of the guy and looked at him in surprise. Mu lay quietly and endured after hot wax dripped on him. The hostess looked at him angrily. The protagonist was lying on the floor. He turned around and told the girl that the temperature and atmosphere were now suitable. He asked the hostess to take the rest of the things out of his cloak. Manton was very surprised. She reached out and took the protagonist's cloak. The hostess was very surprised. She found an ice whip in the main character's clothes. There was also an electric eel whip. Manton found an immortal rope in the guy's clothes. There was also another forbidden artifact there called the Dark Abyss of Illusions. The hostess looked at the guy with an interested look. She told him in a cheerful voice that she had never known he was such an expert before. Mu was lying on the floor. He looked at the girl with exhaustion and said that for a long time he couldn't find someone who could use these toys on him. The main character, in a weakening voice, asked the owner to handle the things properly. Manton smiled happily at the guy. She angrily told him to try not to die in her house then. The protagonist collapsed to the floor from exhaustion. Magical artifacts lay next to him. Manton lay next to him. The girl smiled wickedly at the guy. She said she hadn't known he was so resilient. The hostess told the guest that was enough for today and that he could leave. The main character turned around angrily and asked the owner where Lotus had gone. The girl looked at the flower on the table. She told the guy that she would keep it for herself. Mu told the young lady that they would continue with her when there was an opportunity. He prepared to leave. The hostess was sitting near the table. She told the guy with a smile that she could call the servants to show him out. He answered his partner that he could get there on his own. The main character walked out of the house and onto the street. He leaned his hand against the wall and started coughing. He stood near the wall. He told himself in an exhausted voice that he could get there. The protagonist turned away with displeasure. He said that the girl really hadn't come out to see him off. Mu looked ahead with an angry look and said that he needed to meet the girl Ye Yuya now. The main character looked angrily ahead and decided that he should now meet Ye Yuya. A customer in green clothes stood inside the store. She asked the owner with displeasure, "Is there really nothing left?" The girl asked the seller with displeasure, "Is there really not even a third-rank Kwai hardening pill?" The old man in the window explained to the girl that there would soon be exams for the Li and Yin sect, and therefore there was a huge demand for elixirs. The client looked down in displeasure. The old man told the girl he couldn't help her. Even the lowest-grade, first-rate pills were sold out. The salesman glanced at the girl and said that the medicine should have been purchased in advance. The customer explained to the old man that she was from out of town and not a local. The old man explained to the girl that she would know next time. The dissatisfied customer turned around and walked away. The salesman at the window watched her go. The green-eyed girl thought she needed a pill to break through to the next level. She could ask Brother Yeyu for one. The sister remembered that her brother had been very gloomy after the last battle. If she disturbed him, he would definitely get angry. The warrior touched her face with her hands. She sternly told herself that she needed to find a way out. The protagonist walked into the store. He told the salesperson that he wanted to offer him a new batch of pills. The girl listened attentively. The guy stood with a bag in his hands. The old man asked the client, "Did Elder Ren really make these pills?" Mu happily told his partner that the pills weren't very sophisticated. The salesman cheerfully told the guy he could buy his medications without checking. He explained to his partner that he could check his pills. A girl watched with interest from the side. The old man went deeper into the store. He told the guy that he would now conduct an appraisal. At this moment, a stranger approached the main character from behind. The girl told the protagonist in a frightened voice that she wanted to ask him for a favor. She needed someone to make a Qi-hardening pill for her. Mu turned around and asked his partner in a calm voice, "Is she really also preparing for the Sect's trials?" The stranger looked at the guy in surprise and told him that it was all true. He glanced at his partner and said that they could be competitors at the entrance exams. The fewer opponents capable of breaking through, the better it would be for him. The girl thought to herself with displeasure that she had come across some strange guy. Mu unexpectedly handed the stranger a small red pill in a box. Mu smiled slyly at the surprised girl and said that he could give her a Qi hardening pill. The stranger grabbed the box with the medicine. She reminded the guy what he had just told her. Mu explained to his partner that there were no conflicts of interest between them. He didn't need to participate in the immortal gate test. The protagonist smiled and told the girl she could take the pill from him for free. The stranger explained to the guy that she couldn't just take other people's things. Mu explained to the girl with a smile that she could take one pill for a breakthrough. It still wouldn't be enough for her. The protagonist suggested to his partner that when she collected enough spirit stones, she could come to his house. He would sell her a pill at market price. The girl was delighted with the offer. The girl asked the protagonist in surprise where his home was. Mu winked slyly at his partner and said that he lived in an estate near the Jiaofeng quarter in the eastern part. The main character handed the girl a flower. He told her to take it as a sign. The stranger bowed to the boy. She told him that she would now collect the stones. Tomorrow she would come for the goods. The girl ran sharply towards the exit of the house. She thanked the protagonist as she went. The stranger ran and joyfully hugged Lotus. She thought the guy had turned out to be responsive to her. The protagonist looked down in front of him with displeasure. He became thoughtful after talking to the girl. I was very surprised when I heard my partner call him kind. The protagonist thought that Ye Qian was the youngest daughter of the Ye family. She had a gentle nature. She didn't yet know about his notoriety since she had just arrived in the city. Mu walked inside the room. He thought that Wei was very good for him in terms of intelligence. Therefore, a successful start was made with the Yi family. The old man appeared in the window with a bag in his hands. He told the boy in a joyful voice that his pills were of excellent quality. The salesman glanced inside the store in surprise. He saw that the main character had disappeared somewhere. He walked very quickly down the street and hummed something to himself. There were passers-by around him. The protagonist looked at the flower in his hands. He didn't know who he could give the last lotus to. Mu took a closer look at the flower in his hand. He noticed that a dark aura was radiating from it. A stranger in dark clothes appeared from the side. He put his hand on the protagonist's shoulder and demanded that he not move or scream. The masked stranger demanded the guy very sternly to follow him. A fighter in dark clothes entered a dark alley with the main character. Mu turned and looked sternly at the fighter. He said that if he had come earlier, he wouldn't have had to waste energy attracting all those families to him. The stranger suddenly swung his hand sharply and a bright red glow appeared in the air. The main character asked the warrior in a frightened voice. Did he really not want to ask him anything and decided to kill him straight away? The fighter in dark clothing began waving his arms in all directions. A bright red glow surrounded him. Mu thought to himself with fear that he wasn't the main character right now. There was a big difference in levels between him and his opponent. The boy looked piercingly ahead. The system reminded him that he was a companion of the Children of Fate. A girl ran up from the side. She raised her weapon and blocked a blow from the fighter with her hand to protect the main character. The doe swung, and with a very powerful blow threw the attacker far to the side. The main character looked in surprise at the stranger who had just flown to his aid. Mu thought to himself with displeasure that in this story he would always be the weakling who was constantly being saved. The unknown warrior had his clothes damaged. He had a wound on his chest. Suddenly the clothes on the fighter's chest began to tear. Gradually the clothes on the stranger's chest began to tear apart. Suddenly a very bright red glow appeared around the stranger. The protagonist and his protector stood and watched in amazement as their unfamiliar rival burned in a bright fire. Lan told the guy in a thoughtful voice that there really might still be demonic cultivators hiding near their sect. The main character thanked the girl for saving him and asked her name. The girl took out a small paper airplane and showed it to the main character. Mu looked at his savior in surprise. He said that she had sent him paper cranes and snow lotuses. Mu promised his partner that he was ready to serve her faithfully and truly as a sign of gratitude. Lan replied to the guy that there was no need for such extremes. The girl turned around and explained to the guy that she was still not his mentor. She gave her name as Lan Mulian. The protagonist invited his savior to visit Mu's house. He wanted to receive her with dignity as a token of gratitude. The girl turned around and told the guy there was no need to thank her. He nervously suggested that his partner leave a method of communication. The warrior suddenly jumped up and flew upward. The protagonist covered his face with his hands in surprise. The protagonist looked after the girl in surprise as she flew away. At a young age, she possessed a strong talent and level of cultivation. Mu remembered being beaten by a crowd of chosen ones in his past life. He ultimately decided to look after sister mentor Lan. The protagonist thought that the doe behaved much more coldly and reservedly in real life than in her letters. The girl was flying alone across the night sky. Suddenly, she abruptly stopped her flight. The doe stopped in the sky above the city and screamed loudly. A huge blade fell from below her. The girl felt devastated. She said angrily that she had finally met her pen pal, but she couldn't get a word out. The protagonist arrived at the Mu family's door and walked inside. He dreamily told himself that with the Lan mentor, who had descended from the mountains, the situation would become much more stable. The protagonist stood near the door. He joyfully told himself that the girl was now at the peak of spiritual perfection. The guy opened the door and shouted to his girlfriend that he was back. He wanted to tell her that a girl from the Lianyin sect had agreed to help a demonic cultivator. Joxy with animal ears and a big tail was sitting in the room. She called out to Mr. Mu in fear. The main character suddenly jumped out of the room. He said in fear that he had the wrong door. Josie with animal ears shouted through the door to the guy that she didn't understand how this happened. The main character said in fear that she too had become a demonic cultivator. The girl opened the door. She shouted to the guy in fear that she herself didn't understand how this had happened. The protagonist realized that she too had become a demonic cultivator. The guy suddenly ran into the room and slammed the door behind him. Mu grabbed his girlfriend by the shoulders and asked excitedly what had happened. During his absence, Ruaki told the protagonist that she had advanced to the 5th stage of Kui cultivation. But after the break, she had transformed into a small animal. The main character looked at his frightened girlfriend with great attention. He became interested in her ears. He reached forward and touched the girl's fluffy ears with his hands. She was frightened. Josie growled and looked at her friend with great displeasure. Mu glanced at the girl and said that they urgently needed to figure out how to restore her previous appearance. The protagonist said that they now need to be wary of the elder sister from the Leani sect. She is capable of detecting wicked practitioners simply by their aura. Simply hiding in the room will be useless. Josie worriedly told her friend that if the people from the Gates of Immortality found her in this state, her whole family would suffer. The girl told her friend that he could simply hand her over to the evil hunters from the Gate of Immortals. The Mu family could try to protect the remaining members of the Bai family. Mu stroked his girlfriend's head and said that she had done nothing wrong. She didn't need to be killed for suddenly turning into a fox girl. The main character thought for a moment and realized that the doe might not be able to resist and would chop down his changed girlfriend. Mu explained to his beast friend that she had changed due to the rapid increase in her cultivation level. Mutations were completely natural in her case. Josie looked at her friend prayerfully and asked if she could get rid of this power. The girl wrapped her arms around the protagonist's side. She asked if she could borrow his birth vessel. She hugged the guy. He asked the girl if they would, like last time, transmit everything through contact. Josie glanced at the guy and said that she wanted to go further. She wanted to fully utilize his innate vessel. The girl told the guy in a frightened voice that all this would only be to suppress the unholy energy. He calmed his partner down and hugged her. He said she could use his gift as much as she wanted. He was ready to sincerely help. The guy closed his eyes and smiled at the girl. She stood opposite him and chuckled shyly. The girl closed her eyes and shyly clung to her friend. The girl arrived at the estate gates. Lao came out and asked, "Why did she come here from the Gates of the Immortals?" Lan explained to the old man that the sect leader had appointed her as an examiner. She was to personally conduct an interview with the young master. Lao extended his hand to the side. He told the girl that he would take her to the main waiting room. The doe asked the old man with interest why he, with his level and position, was working as a manager in the Mu family's house. The old man explained to the guest that he had received invaluable help from the head of the Mu family and had voluntarily accepted the duties of the young master's mentor. Lao walked with the girl through the estate grounds. He told her that he was just running an errand and looking after the young master. The doe thought to herself with dismay that she could use the examiner's position as an excuse to explain to the guy that she was not just an arrogant know-it-all. The girl glanced away in alarm. She noticed someone appear on the estate grounds. The doe shouted in a frightened voice to the surprised old man that there was a demon in front of them. The warrior ran forward at full speed. She reached out for her weapon and shouted that there was a demonic cultivator in the estate. The main character was lying next to his girlfriend on top of a white blanket. Josie opened her eyes carefully and looked at the guy. He was next to her. The girl shyly closed her eyes. After that, she chuckled to herself. The main character closed his eyes. After that, he touched his girlfriend. The girl opened her eyes and put her hand to her face. She was thinking about something of her own. Josie looked up carefully in front of her. She saw some pink outlines. The girl looked up in front of her with great attention. She continued to think about something. The doe, weapon in hand, was running at full speed across the estate grounds. She was in a hurry. The warrior stopped and looked around. She felt an unholy aura. The doe hopped around the estate grounds. She decided that the demonic practitioner had arrived to finish what he had started with the protagonist. The girl concentrated. She felt a persistent, evil fiend next to her. The girl looked down shyly. She told the guy that this was all too much. Josie closed her eyes and reached her hand down. She felt a strong excitement. The girl turned around abruptly. She shouted at the guy that was enough. The main character stood up and looked slyly at his girlfriend. He didn't say anything to her. Josie looked at the protagonist with joy and a smile. She cupped his face in her hands. The delighted girl suddenly hugged the main character and kissed him. The warrior ran around the estate's courtyard. She felt a magical aura around her. The doe looked around in fear. She sensed that there was a demonic cultivator next to her. Lao ran up to the guest. He asked her in surprise why she thought there was a demonic cultivator in the estate. Lan replied that there were special methods for detecting unholy energy. The doe held a sword in her hands. She told the old man that the demonic cultivator had already returned. The warrior decided that the protagonist's life was in danger. Mu was next to his girlfriend at the time. Josie told the boy thoughtfully that his innate cultivation vessel felt completely different. The protagonist looked at his girlfriend and explained that the closer their connection, the more effective the vessel would be. Mu looked at the girl carefully. He wanted to hug her again. The main character hugged his girlfriend and touched her ears with his lips. Josie anxiously told the guy not to touch her ears and tail. The girl hugged the protagonist and kissed him. She purred contentedly to herself. Josie felt very strong changes in her body. She sighed loudly. The girl looked ahead and saw a bright pink lightning appear in front of her. The girl closed her eyes and lay on the bed. She was completely relaxed. Josie lay on the bed with her eyes closed. The protagonist stood up and stepped aside. Suddenly, the warrior abruptly opened the door to the room. She looked inside carefully. The girl went inside and saw something under the blanket on the table. She asked the old man what it was. The doe abruptly tore the cover off the object to see what was lying on the table. On the tree lay the mask of a defeated warrior, a bright aura emanating from it. The doe asked the old man, "Is this really the remains of a demonic cultivator?" Lao explained to the girl that she saw before her a bone from a snake-like monster killed several days ago. Due to the high level of cultivation, a lot of unholy energy remained here. Lao explained to his partner that if an unfamiliar cultivator came close, he would sense his spiritual energy. The guest looked closely at the object on the table. She thought that it had become very suspicious. The main character entered the room. He told the girl that she saw his trophy, which he brought with him. Mu explained to the girl as sincerely as possible that he would use this subject as motivation for his improvement. The protagonist said in a dreamy voice that he wanted to become a cultivator of the Gate of Immortals as soon as possible. He would stand shoulder to shoulder with his mentor. The doe looked at the guy with great displeasure. She didn't know if she could believe his words. He looked at the girl very distrustfully. She was still studying him with her eyes. The main character could not understand why the guest looked at him so distrustfully. The girl turned around and headed for the exit. The protagonist and the old man watched her go. Mu asked the old man if he had said anything to the girl before his arrival. Lao answered the boy that he had not said anything to the guest. The protagonist realized that the people from the Gates of Immortality really do have methods for finding evil spirits. The girl slept soundly on the bed, safe and sound. The protagonist thought that her unholy energy had been neutralized by his vessel body. A disgruntled girl ran down the street. She was disappointed after talking to her boyfriend. Lan thought to herself with displeasure that she had become very accustomed to cold faces. It was difficult for her to speak in person with a sincere pen pal. She thought that this was the very surprise her mentor had spoken of. After a short rest, the protagonist was walking with his girlfriend. Josie told the guy as they walked that he shouldn't have walked her to the estate. Mu explained to his companion that he needed to attend to something very important. The main character approached the doors of his girlfriend's estate. He told her that he wanted to see her mother. Josie became excited and joyful. She decided to herself that the main character wanted to marry her. The woman with animal ears smiled happily and turned to Xiao Mu. The woman smiled evilly and told the girl that her aunt was waiting for her. The hostess stood near the entrance and looked attentively at her daughter. Josie joyfully ran up to the woman and called her. The mother greeted her daughter. The protagonist walked forward across the room. The hostess bowed to the main character and thanked him for his help for her family. He smiled slyly. He told the lady that he could not take such gratitude from her. He explained to the woman in a stern voice that he did not want the attack to happen again. The hostess looked at the guy very disapprovingly. She didn't answer him. The room suddenly filled with some kind of dark aura. The woman stood and looked at her daughter and the guy across from her. Josie looked ahead with fear. She saw a bright red aura. The woman flew high above the ground with red swirls around her. The hostess was floating in the air. She told the guy with a smile not to refuse the reward. The woman asked the guy to accept the gift. A red artifact appeared in front of the protagonist. A guy saw a purple medallion on his hand. The woman told him that this sign would help him in the future if he had problems with demonic practices. He thanked the hostess. He said that he wanted to hear an explanation from her regarding the previous misunderstanding. A woman hovered above the red streams. She told the protagonist that all the anomalies with the girl were connected to him. The hostess looked angrily at the young couple and said that they had already done this. Josie was very surprised when she heard such words from her mother. She felt embarrassed. The woman said in a thoughtful voice that the energy of the heavenly Tao was present in the girl's body. The speed of Ruaki's progress was very high. The main character looked at the hostess and said that the whole problem could be in the congenital vessel. The guy looked at the hovering woman. He said that it was impossible to hide the special physique after activation. The hostess looked sternly at the boy with blazing eyes. She said that those with such a physique are born with a body of divine power. In the alley, she wanted to force the fighters to reveal the true power of their innate vessel. The woman told the disgruntled guy that his physical parameters were below average for his age. The hostess was flying around the room. She told the guy that she couldn't trust him with her daughter. The woman told the guy that his physique was as tasty a prey as the energy of the heavenly Tao. The hostess explained to the guy that he and the girl had become targets. Powerful masters would hunt them. It would be very difficult for them to defend themselves. The mother asked the guy with displeasure how he could protect her daughter. Josie stepped into the center of the room. She angrily told the woman that she would use her celestial energy to protect the boy. The mother looked down at her daughter with surprise and displeasure. The woman hovered in the center of the room. She told the boy that his father had once saved her and hidden her in the city. Over the years of recovery, she had fallen in love with him. The owner told the guy that after a long life together, she had become accustomed to human form and decided to stay and live among people. The protagonist wanted to tell the woman something about demonic cultivators. His partner explained to the guy that she wasn't allowed to retire just like that. The hostess explained to the boy that she had been observing the energy of the heavenly realm for Her Majesty. Because of this, she was allowed to remain in the human world. Mu reminded his partner about the killed werewolf snake. He warned her that the Empress of Evil might exact retribution from her. The hostess angrily told the boy there was no need to hide anything. Her Majesty always has ways of observing. The protagonist remembered with excitement that he had already felt pressure from the Empress before. The hostess told the boy that the celestial energy hunter had crossed the line. He had attracted the attention of the immortal gate followers. The Empress demanded that the fuss be hushed up. The hostess was surprised that the guy completely believed her words. She warned him that her words could be false. The protagonist laughed joyfully. He slyly told the woman that he could determine her sincerity. Mu used the skill of the villain's friend. He immediately determined that the woman was not bad. The guy told the woman that he had already spoken with the evil spirit exterminator who had arrived. Mu looked at the hostess and asked her to agree to a small sacrifice. He had a plan to settle the matter. The woman told the guy that he could speak to her with confidence. The guy began to tell the woman and her daughter in a sly voice what they would do now. The owner told the guy in a frightened voice that he could be putting himself in danger. The main character glanced at his girlfriend. He said that he was ready to do this for her. The guy walked outside and was heading towards the entrance to his mansion. A girl came up to him from behind and called him. Mu turned around and greeted Miss Yeqian very happily next to him. The protagonist informed the girl with a smile that all the necessary pills were already ready. He invited her to follow him to the estate. Qian was very scared. She looked closely at the protagonist's face. The girl looked at the guy carefully. She couldn't believe that it was the same person as when they first met. Qian looked at the guy with fear. She remembered that he was very sunny and charming. The main character looked at the girl. He told her that it wasn't she who called him. Suddenly, someone from below turned to the guy. He looked down in front of him in surprise. The main character saw in front of him a short girl with white hair and green clothes. The protagonist looked closely at the short stranger standing next to Qian. The guy stood opposite the girl. They looked at each other intently. The protagonist decided that the person standing opposite him was Qian's daughter. A girl named Ye Lingswan shouted at the guy in an angry voice that she knew his true appearance. Qian looked at her sister with fear. She wanted Ta to shut up as soon as possible. The main character realized with surprise that he saw in front of him an underfed older sister. Lingswan told the protagonist that he wanted to get closer to her sister with the help of pills. She accused the guy of being a real lecher. The girl handed the guy a bag. She said it contained spiritual stones for the pill he gave her sister. Lingswan sternly forbade the protagonist from approaching her sister. The protagonist looked at his new partner with excitement. He realized that she was not from around here. Mu was holding a small bag in his hands. He told the girl that the rumors about him greatly distorted his image. The girl looked down at her sister and said they were disrespecting the boy. Lingshu was unhappy that her sister stood up for the main character. The girl pushed her sister aside. She said in an angry voice that she had collected information on young representatives of noble families. The records about the protagonist were nothing but debauchery and abomination. Qian told her sister with displeasure that she had merely heard some rumors. Lingshu warned her younger sister that people in this world were very treacherous. The girl glared angrily at the protagonist. She shouted that she would rip off his mask of politeness. Then everyone would see his true nature. He didn't answer the girl. He looked at her with great attention and interest. The protagonist stood at the threshold. He told the girls to gently pull his cheeks. Ling Xiu, in an angry voice, suggested that the guy fight her. The girl sternly told the boy that cultivators fight in martial arts or alchemy. She asked her partner what level of cultivation he was currently at. The protagonist replied to his partner that he personally had recently reached the 5th level of essence purification. The girl told the protagonist that she was higher in level than him. She didn't want to use her advantage in a combat match. Lingshu challenged her opponent to a pill-making competition. The girl told the guy that he must have good pill-making skills. The protagonist opened the door to his house. He told the girl to come inside and they would have a battle of alchemy. He promised her that he would prepare everything she needed. Lao and the girl peeked out from around the corner. The old man said that their master had recently developed a strong appetite. The elder said in a thoughtful voice that the guy had been hanging around noble ladies lately. We looked at the guy with displeasure. She said that noble ladies couldn't lose their heads over him. The protagonist set up 2 huge golden vats in the center of the arena. An old man standing to one side said the guy was asking for humiliation by staging a duel. The maid glanced sideways at her master. She said thoughtfully that perhaps he liked being called a worthless person. The girl stood next to a huge vat. She offered to compare the level of production of the basic pills with the boy. The main character smiled very slyly and did not answer his rival. The girl smiled and told the guy that he couldn't even make the simplest pill. The protagonist challenged his rival to do something truly useful. He wanted to create a pill to improve Kuai for Tian. The 2 sisters exchanged silent glances. They didn't say anything to the guy. Lingshu asked the guy discontentedly, "What's next?" The protagonist sternly suggested to his rival that they start a competition to create Kuai improvement pills. Both girls looked at each other in bewilderment. The older sister sternly told the boy that the Qi cultivation pill wasn't that easy to create. The main character angrily asked his rival, "Is she really hesitant to speak out against him?" Ling Xuan glared at the boy. She didn't know what she should answer him now. The girl waved her hands. She angrily asked the guy, "Can he really create a Qi cultivation pill?" Qian recalled with excitement that her sister had already wanted to create a Qi cultivation pill for her. But due to her lack of experience, she was unable to properly control the flames, and everything ended in failure. The girl thought with displeasure that her sister might lose to the main character. This would not end well. Wei peered around the corner into the courtyard. She remembered that she had never seen the young gentleman approach the alchemical cauldron. She decided that the boy wanted to end the match in a draw, where both participants would fail. The protagonist stood in the courtyard near 2 tables with large vats. He told his rivals that everything was ready and they could begin. The participant extended her hand to the side, and a magical yellow glow emanated from it above the table. The girl thought that her previous attempts at creating pills had ended badly, but this time she was bound to succeed. The participant glared at the guy. She decided that her sister shouldn't be fooled by this good-for-nothing anymore. The protagonist watched his rival closely. He saw that she was skilled at forming pills. It was obvious that Lingshu had been practicing for a long time. Forming the pill into multiple layers is a complex process. The more tightly it is pressed, the higher the chance of success and its quality. Qi cultivation pills are the most complex in their structure. It takes thousands of attempts for an alchemist to master this process. The girl was completely absorbed in the process of preparing the pill. There was a bright glow near her hands. The guy noted with surprise that his rival managed to prepare the Kuai cultivation pill in 10 minutes. The girl stood next to the magical vat and continued preparing the medicine. Mu noted that his rival had trouble controlling the fire. The process of making a pill can be compared to a complex puzzle. Creating a complex elixir can be compared to managing hundreds of cauldrons in a competition. Each facet of the pill must be pierced a specific number of times at precise intervals. Controlling spiritual power requires attention to detail. The guy closely followed the girl's progress. He thought that her excessive diligence was leading to internal exhaustion and a retreat. The main character was holding a small, multicolored ball in his hands. He decided to tweak it a little. Lingshu stood next to the magical Chan and continued preparing the pill. The protagonist watched her from the side. The girl looked closely at the pill in the guy's hands. She decided he had made it at random. The girl decided that the main character used a secret molding method from the elder alchemist Ren. The boy joyfully threw his pill into the fire above the large vat. He told the girl with a smile that if she used weak fire, she would be able to cook the pill until next year. Qian told the boy in surprise that his bear-shaped pill had begun to turn golden. The fire in the protagonist's vat grew brighter. He angrily told the girl that a true master is never afraid to light a flame. The girl watched the protagonist's pill closely, the flames continuing to rage around her. Lingshu carefully supervised the preparation of the medicine. She decided that at high heat, any mistake would ruin the pill. The protagonist watched, angrily and joyfully, as his medicine flew over the large fire. The girl realized that the guy was using techniques that only experienced masters could master. Mu stood near a huge and tall flame. He happily told the girl that she could not control such a large error. The main character angrily told the girls that the older sister was more like a child. The girls were very surprised. Lingshu angrily asked the guy, "What is he saying?" Suddenly, a very bright green explosion occurred in front of the girl. A lot of energy flew past her. The participant was surprised to see a huge green flame rising from her cauldron. He looked ahead with interest. He thought that the flame should be exactly like this. He needed to increase the intensity of the fire. The participant remembered with fright that she had never used such force before. Both pills were burning brightly in their vats. The protagonist and his rival closed their eyes. The flames inside the cauldrons grew brighter and stronger. The protagonist and the girl felt a powerful energy. Suddenly, the protagonist's cauldron exploded brightly, sending a huge flame flying upward. The participant was very surprised. She looked ahead in fear. The golden pill, after being fully prepared, flew over the green vat. The burnt protagonist said in a joyful voice that he had overdone it with force. A golden pill was flying near the girl. The protagonist told his rival that her medicine had to be perfect. The golden ball was flying through space. Qian told her sister with admiration that she had succeeded. The protagonist's magical vat exploded and shattered into pieces. He told the girl that he had lost to her. The guy told his partner that he had failed and would no longer communicate with her. Qian responded to the protagonist with great excitement, saying that he had proven himself to be very skilled. The girl approached the protagonist and handed him his burnt pill. The guy looked at her in surprise. Lingshu told her opponent that she had not set any penalties for him for losing. The protagonist reminded his partner about his spoiled pill. Lingshu turned away. She told the guy that she would take the defective pill with her to feed the animals. Two sisters lived in a hotel next to the Ye family in Tianchuan City. Tian told her sister that they were not staying at the Ye family's residence. Lingshu explained to her partner that the Ye family did not consider her a relative. The girl approached and told her partner in a tired voice that she needed to rest. Tian, in a cheerful voice, told her sister that she would go to her room and take the qi cultivation pill she had created. The girl held the main character's burnt pill in her hands. She had created her own pill thanks to the boy's prompting. She didn't understand why he had helped her in this way. Lingshu looked closely at the ball in her hand. The pill was burnt on the outside, but the inside was undamaged. The stove explosion was under the boy's control. The girl looked closely at the pill in her hands. It contained all the properties of a qi cultivation pill. After a short pause, the girl decided to taste the pill. She realized the medicine was bitter. The maid approached the guy. She sternly asked him where he got such knowledge of chemistry. Mu lay on the bed. He explained to the maid that he had spent all his free time struggling with this knowledge. Wei was giving the master a massage. She said his free time was filled with drinking and gambling. The girl pressed her hand on the guy's back with all her strength. He screamed with great displeasure. The girl angrily told the guy that he had been acting strange lately. His behavior and logic had become more humane. He lay silently on the bed. He listened to his maid and did not answer her. The girl angrily shouted at the guy that the great master would not have taken over such a body. Wei got off the bed. She asked the master if he had recovered. Mu stretched out on the bed. He thanked the maid for helping him clear the ducts. The maid turned around and walked away. She told the guy that she would also be recuperating. Tomorrow was supposed to be a potential test at the Leani Sect. He lay quietly on the bed. He asked the maid, why should she go through the gates of the immortals? The girl stopped. She told the protagonist that she wanted to go with a guy she knew and was keeping an eye on him. The protagonist glanced at the girl. He happily remembered that his mother had found this maid for him. The maid came to the door and closed it. She stopped and thought, we thought about it and realized that only with a guy could she tame her special physique. The woman stroked the girl's head. She told her that she was entrusting her with taking care of the main character. The mistress told the maid that the boy would be unbearable and capricious in the coming years. But one day in the future, he would seem mature to her. The maid looked up at the night sky. She remembered her mistress's words. She decided that this moment had already arrived. A crowd had gathered outside. The gate of the immortals was being tested for talent. The host, standing near the pillar on the stage, called for the next person to rise. A participant in a pink outfit came onto the stage. She told Leani that she had been preparing very hard to join the Leani sect. Manting looked at the magic pillar in front of her with great interest. The participant approached a large glowing stone and extended her hand towards it. The stone sparkled very brightly, indicating that the girl had achieved the 8th stage of essence purification. The audience was very happy when they heard the girl's result. The participant was satisfied. The doe looked away from the stage. She said that the next participant could come up. Manting turned around furtively. She noticed a participant in a green outfit appear next to her. Kian extended her hand forward towards the stone. She looked at it intently. The participant touched the stone with her hand. A very bright glow emanated from it in all directions. Someone in the audience said with admiration that the contestant was of the same level as the young lady. Huang Manting turned around in surprise. She didn't know who could be at her level. Someone from the audience asked young Master Ye Yu if he knew this girl. He saw this participant recently near the Ye family estate. The fighter looked at the participant with displeasure. He said she was just one of his distant relatives from the restricted area. They didn't communicate with them. The people in the crowd were very surprised when they heard the guy talk about the restricted area. They didn't know people even lived there. Kian stood and listened attentively to what people in the crowd were saying. Someone shouted that the forbidden zone was full of curses. The participant angrily demanded that the presenter quickly call the next person. The doe looked closely at the girl in the crowd. She prepared to call her out. The doe stood next to the magic stone. She told the next participant to come forward. A young Lingshu came onto the stage. She looked around with displeasure. People couldn't figure out who the young participant was who appeared on stage. Lingshu closed her eyes, concentrated, and placed her hand on the stone. Suddenly, a very bright glow appeared near the stone. It announced that the participant had reached the first stage of Qi cultivation. The guests were amazed when they saw that such a young girl had a high level for her age. He was already very angry. He didn't understand how the girl could break through to the next level in just one night. Qian approached her sister and said with admiration that she didn't even know she was at such a level. The girl replied to her partner that she had managed to break through last night. The participant slyly recalled that the improvement pill from the main character had helped her a lot. The girl remembered that the pill tasted bad, but the effect after taking it was good. Qian called out to her sister from behind in fear. The girl approached the edge of the stage. Lingshu joyfully announced that she was the eldest daughter of the ruler of the Forbidden Zone. She explained to the audience that the people in the Forbidden Zone were no different from ordinary people. The audience looked at the contestant in surprise. They didn't want to believe her words. The girl promised the audience that if she and her sister caused any inconvenience to the city, they would compensate them tenfold. The guests fell silent. They listened with interest to the girl on stage. He already thought to himself with displeasure that the participant looked very smooth to outsiders. The girl on the stage said in a dissatisfied voice that because of rumors she had insulted a young gentleman in the city. A contestant on stage said she wanted to apologize to her boyfriend right then and there. The audience couldn't figure out who she was talking about. Qian looked around. She remembered that the main character was taking a test and that's why he didn't come. The host said that participant Ling Xuan passed the test and the next participant could go on. The participant was surprised because she did not surprise the examiner from the sect at all. The girl turned around sharply and noticed Josie approaching her and blocking the sky for her. Josie told the presenter in a sly voice that she was greeting her elder sister, mentor Lan. The presenter looked at her partner in surprise. She asked, "Do they really know each other?" Josie thanked her sister mentor in a cunning voice for her repeated help to her Dao partner. The doe fell silent. She looked at the girl with displeasure and said nothing to her. Joxie smiled slyly and said that her lover praised his elder sister's immortal elegance. She thanked Lan for helping her Dao partner. The doe fell silent. She looked at the participant very sternly and angrily. The presenter angrily approached the girl on stage. An evil, chilling aura surrounded her. The shocked Lingshu felt a very strong, icy cold in front of him. The doe calmed down. After a short pause, she told the participants to begin the test. Josie stretched out her hand in front of her and prepared to touch the stone with it. A very bright blue radiation emanated from the magic stone towards the girl. The audience was very amazed. Ling Xiu excitedly said that the participant had reached the 5th level of Qi cultivation. The spectators were very surprised when they realized the girl had reached a high level of purification. Someone commented in surprise that the participant had jumped 10 sub-levels at once. The doe approached the stone. She looked at the participant with surprise and interest. The presenter looked at the girl with great attention. Josie stood and smiled. There was a pink aura around her. The doe decided to take decisive action as soon as possible. She reached out to grab the blade. The warrior extended her sword toward the girl. She shouted that she had the same aura as the demon who had recently attacked the protagonist. Josie turned her head to the side. She looked at the blade next to her with fear. The host sternly told the girl that the spirit testing stone revealed all of the participants' spiritual energy. The host sternly told the girl that the spirit testing stone revealed all of the participants. Ling Xiu looked at the host with fear. She asked, "What is this immortal gate follower planning?" Suddenly, a huge shadow appeared above the ground. A demonic predator from the sky appeared over the square. A huge predator dug its paws into the roofs of houses. It looked angrily down at the people. The beast with burning eyes said in an evil voice that he had found the key of the heavenly Tao. The surprised doe stood with a blade in her hand. She asked the monster again about the key of the heavenly Tao. An evil demonic predator demanded that the girl give him the heavenly key. He threatened to destroy everything around him. He realized with anger that the girl had taken his heavenly path key for herself. That's why her cultivation had skyrocketed so much. The voice told the guy in a stern voice not to act like a hero now, and demanded that he retreat. The fighter very quickly ran to the side. He shouted loudly that he would regain the chi of the heavenly path. 3 girls stood in the center of the arena on the square. The sky above them was very red. The predator looked angrily at the people. He sternly threatened them that none of them would escape. The participant told the host in a frightened voice that she would not run away. Lan glanced at the monster and said that the Sect's disciples were supposed to destroy demons. A monster surrounded by bright flames rushed at the people from above. He shouted that they were climbing into his mouth. The presenter and the girl jumped up above the ground. The sky above them was blood red. The doe apologized to the girl. She said that she mistook the wild fox's aura for her own. Ling Xiu glanced away with displeasure. She didn't understand why Ruaki was so relaxed. 3 girls attacked the demonic predator in unison with bright rays. The monster smiled evilly and looked at the people. Ling Xiu screamed in fear. The predator grinned so vilely. The guy inside the predator thought slyly that he should now keep his cool in the face of death. Mu was inside the demonic predator and controlled it. He happily thought that if 3 girls were fighting against him, then this was triple the profit. A little earlier, the main character met a girl in a nearby alley. The girl looked ahead with displeasure and sighed very loudly. Suddenly, a huge, fluffy tail fell off the girl. She screamed loudly. The surprised protagonist stood behind her. The partner turned around. She slyly asked the guy, "How did he know about the secret of their family with the fallen tails?" Mu held a huge, fluffy tail in his hands. He told his partner that his mentor had told him about it as a child. At first, he thought such knowledge would be useless. The boy held a brightly colored tail in his hands. He asked the woman to follow his plan and use magic. The protagonist decided to merge with the illusion of the foxtail and begin to control it. The girl reached forward and touched the fluffy tail. The protagonist stood surrounded by bright and sparkling streams. These were magical foxtails. Mu suddenly turned into a huge monster and appeared above the city. The warriors on the ground jumped up and began to attack the incoming predator. The predator above the city looked carefully behind him. He watched the girls flying around him. The monster in the sky looked ahead with displeasure. There were bright flashes in front of him. The predator opened its huge mouth and prepared to attack its rivals with a bright beam of radiation. The doe was hovering high above the ground with bright rays surrounding it. The doe, in flight, shouted to the girl to attack the predator's tail to weaken it. A flying monster above the city attacked people with bright radiation. Ling Xiu stood on the ground and raised her hands in surprise. She didn't understand how Ruaki, in her cultivation stage, could fly like that. The doe turned around mid-flight and said excitedly that the flying fox's cultivation was at the peak of the spirit tempering stage. She needed the help of the other girls. The participant with the weapon jumped up. She shouted to the mentor that she could help her. Josie flew from behind to the fox's huge tail and prepared to cut it off with her sword. The girl chopped off the demonic fox's tail with a powerful blow. The predator screamed loudly. The girl looked up in fear. She didn't understand. How had Josie managed to cut off the fox's tail with one blow of her sword? Ling Xiu spread her arms out to the side, and a bright green glow appeared next to her. She decided to help the girl. The participant stood around a bright green glow. She summoned the art of curses to herself. A bright green pentagram appeared on the ground, with green lightning bolts rising from above. The predator flew high above the ground, surrounded by green lightning. A girl hovered above him. The protagonist within the beast watched the battle closely. He thought Ye Lingshuan was using a secret technique from the Forbidden Lands and following the path of a cultivator. The boy happily decided to himself that his older sister was also a main character. The battered and wounded predator fell from a great height to the ground, its green claws gripping it. The monster lay on the ground, pinned to it by huge green claws. Two girls stood around him on the ground. The doe raised her blade high into the air. She said that the current newcomers weren't so bad. The battered monster lay on the ground. He looked at the people with an angry gaze. Suddenly, the predator on Earth exploded into a bright blue flame. The monster's body shattered into tiny pieces. The protagonist ended up on the ground. Surprised girls stood around. Lon looked at the guy on Earth in surprise, Lingxiu asked in a frightened voice. How is Mu feeling? The main character came to his senses. He lay on the ground and looked ahead with a tired gaze. The guy was very surprised. He looked around at his girlfriends. The main character happily justified himself to his girlfriend and said that a fox had almost digested him inside. He barely managed to get out. The guy rushed towards the girl and began to thank her for worrying about him. Lingxiu extended her hand towards Mu and shouted angrily at him not to come near her. The main character happily rushed to his friend Josia to thank her for her help. The maid put her master on her shoulder. She asked the girl for forgiveness for the trouble the guy had caused her. Josie asked the teacher if she needed to take a test to follow the young master to the Leani sect. Lan glanced at her partner and said that she was already in the process of tempering her spirit. She had no need for such formalities. The girl, with the main character on her shoulder, ran to the side. He asked the maid in a frightened voice to give him something to wear. Josie jumped on top of the house. She shouted to the girls on the ground that Mu's family would cover all the damage to the townspeople. The two sisters on the side looked at their mentor in surprise. Doe remained silent in response. After a short pause, the host told Ruaki that she had very outstanding abilities. She wanted to take her straight to the Leani sect to introduce her to the elders. Josie smiled happily back at her mentor and said that she accepted her offer. Lan told the other participant in a stern voice that she would climb the mountain in a few days with the other students. Lingxiu replied to the teacher that she had no objections. The girl shouted in an excited voice that she would catch up with young Mrs. Bai very soon. The doe looked slyly at the student and said that she needed to make good use of this new opportunity. The doe walked across the playground. She told the girl to pack her things and they would meet again in the evening. The mentor wanted to take a walk around the city. Josie said goodbye to her mentor until the evening and smiled at her. The protagonist was at home on the estate. He stood fully clothed near the mirror. The master displeasedly told the maid that she had not thought about his reputation. The guy turned around carefully. He saw a burning red pentagram next to him. The system informed the owner that he had now become a companion of the Children of Fate. Mu thought to himself with surprise that, along with the increase in the vessel, he could now store a third more Kuei energy within himself. The guy looked closely at his hand. He happily thought to himself that he had reached the 6th stage of essence purification. The main character happily thought that he had received a reward for helping the main character. He felt very tired in his body. He yawned deeply. The guy looked ahead and said in a tired voice that controlling this body was tiring for him. The main character turned around in surprise and noticed the mentor appearing next to him. The doe asked the guy very sternly, "What kind of relationship does he have with the little fox?" The main character turned away from the mirror in surprise and saw the mentor doe in front of him. The guest asked the guy very sternly, "What kind of relationship does he have with the fox?" The protagonist burst into tears. He told the girl that if she and the others had stayed longer, the fox would have digested him. Lon strictly asked the guy, "What kind of relationship does Bai Joxi have with which demon?" The teacher sternly asked the main character if Josie was related to the demon. The doe told the guy that his girlfriend's energy was very similar to that of a fox. But there was a difference between them. The mentor sternly told the boy that all of Ruaxi's relatives in Tianshun City were alive, and none of them had died. Lon decided that the demon's true body was still safe and sound. The teacher extended her hand forward. She sternly told the boy that he was very familiar with the Bai Fox family. The doe came close to the guy. She told him that he was controlling the demonic clone of the fox from the inside. The teacher placed her hand on the frightened boy's face. The protagonist thought the doe might squeeze his head hard to punish him as an accomplice of demons. The main character looked calmly ahead. He didn't answer the girl. The doe extended her hand forward. She sternly asked the guy if he could be trusted. After a short pause, the protagonist replied to the mentor that his friends would not harm anyone. Their position was not on the side of the demons. The guest stood opposite the protagonist and looked at him sternly. She said that everything was fine. Mu looked at his partner and said that she had analyzed everything in this story and determined it correctly. The guy asked his partner, "Is this really enough?" The doe looked sternly at her partner and confirmed that this was enough. The protagonist reminded his partner that her sect had personally sent her to destroy the demon. Lan explained to the boy that the leader had simply ordered her to descend the mountain. Mu slyly asked the teacher, "Isn't she interested in how he controlled the illusion and how Ruaki was able to rise to the 5th level of the Qi cultivation stage so quickly?" The doe turned around and looked at the guy. She told him that she was interested. The protagonist told his partner in a serious voice that in his past life, he was a master of the fusion stage with the Tao. Then he was banished to this place. Controlling the clone is a pastime for him. The doe looked at the guy with great surprise. She didn't know whether to believe his words. The protagonist watched his partner closely. He realized that she was torn within herself and could not believe his words. He smiled slyly at his partner and explained that it was all the demon's technique. He simply put on the suit. The protagonist explained to the girl that Bai Ruaki had raised her level thanks to his special physique. The mentor asked the boy, "Is he really like a double vessel?" He told his mentor in a dissatisfied voice that he had laid all his cards on the table. Bad people might find out that there was a double vessel inside him. The doe promised the guy in a reconciling voice that she would not tell anyone about his secret. The girl looked slyly at the guy. She wanted to ask him for something. The doe bowed to the guy and said that she wanted to look at his double vessel. The mentor sternly told the guy that this was a requirement of the gates of the immortals. Mu closed his eyes. A pink aura began to appear around him and spread around. The doe stood there, looking ahead in fear. The aura began to approach her body. The girl looked ahead with fear. Disturbing thoughts entered her mind. The doe stretched out her arms in fear towards the main character and grabbed him. The girl suddenly extended her hand forward. She threw the protagonist onto the bed. Mu lay on the bed with great surprise. He didn't say anything to the girl. The doe suddenly threw herself on top of the guy and lay down. Mu looked at her calmly. The girl looked at the guy from above. She thought that his double vessel could really be so tempting. The frightened protagonist lay on the bed. He decided to himself that he had overdone it with the aroma he was emitting. The doe approached the guy closely. She told herself that she had to pull herself together. Mu, in a trembling voice, told his partner that he still had to remove the vessel. The teacher got scared. She shouted at the boy in a loud voice that he couldn't do that. The girl decided in a frightened voice that she had to trust the guy and stop immediately. The doe fell on top of the main character and began kissing him on the bed. The doe thought to herself with worry that her mentor had not warned her that the double vessel was such a dangerous constitution. A girl named Josie approached the door of the house and knocked carefully with her hand. The girl stood near the door and called the main character in an excited voice. The guest told the guy in an excited voice that she was going inside to see him. The girl entered the room and slyly warned the guy that she was going inside. Josie felt something was wrong. She asked the guy in a trembling voice if he was inside. The doe was lying on top of the main character. She turned away in fear. Josie opened the doors to the room. She looked inside carefully. The guest told the guy with a smile that she would be going to the Lianyin Sect's mountain with the abbess today, and would not be able to be with him. Mu lay on the bed. He smiled slyly at his friend and told her that the gate of immortality valued her too. Josie smiled slyly at the guy. She suggested that he do something before leaving. He stretched out on the bed and smiled at his girlfriend. He offered to wait for her until they climbed the mountain. The girl came close to the embarrassed protagonist and looked at him sternly. Josie studied the boy carefully. She happily told him that the double vessel's aura had become even stronger than before. The main character laughed, frightened. He told his girlfriend not to expose him so openly. He looked ahead with excitement. He decided to himself that all this was very risky. Josie hugged her friend and kissed him. At this time, the frightened doe was lying under the blanket on the bed. The abbess felt a pink aura around her. The smell affected her very strongly. The doe concentrated in fear. She felt the aura of the double vessel strengthen. The girl covered her face with her hands in fear. She told herself to calm down and pull herself together. The doe opened the blanket and looked out from behind it. She wanted to get out. The next morning the sun rose. Josie left the protagonist's room. Doe was able to free herself. The protagonist told the mentor in an apologetic tone that he couldn't prevent it. Doe sat on the bed. She said thoughtfully that she underestimated the power of the double vessel. The protagonist anxiously asked his girlfriend if everything was okay. The guest told the guy that she was fine. He asked his partner if she trusted him too much. She had only known him for a couple of days. The girl glanced at the protagonist and said he took the scribbles in the letter seriously. This meant he wasn't a villain. The cult leader told the girl that the guy was trustworthy if he understood her letters. Marielize was surprised that the girl had listened to the sect leader's prediction. He himself couldn't understand how he could have earned the attention of such a high-ranking person as Lon. The girl stood by the bed. She said in a stern voice that she completely trusted her teacher. He asked his partner, "Is the teacher really more important to him than his parents?" Lon answered the guy without hesitation that the leader was more important to her. The girl stood next to the protagonist. They were reflected in the mirror. The doe explained to the boy that since she was 5, she had only had a mentor. Mu glanced at his reflection in the mirror. He slyly thought that the doe could also be the main character. Lon asked the main character if he really only had a physical relationship with Josie, or if she was his real mate. The protagonist explained to his partner in a stern voice that the Bai family had just emerged from the abyss. They really needed his double vessel. He also needed to atone for his past mistakes. After a short pause, Lon explained to the guy that she understood him. They were supposed to see each other at the Sect soon. The guest left the room and slammed the door. The protagonist watched her go. Mu walked around the room in fear and talked to himself. He decided that for now, the question of the half-demon Josie would be closed. A Wei suddenly appeared from the side. She called the frightened guy a scumbag. He jumped up abruptly in bed. He asked the girl how long she had been there. His partner was sitting near the corner of the bed. She told him she had been there for a long time. The main thing for her was that he was alive. The maid turned away. She told the guy that she didn't understand where he got such a strange build from. Wei turned around. She sternly asked the guy, "Does he really want to deal with several cultivation geniuses with great power at the same time?" Wei turned away with displeasure. She told the frightened protagonist on the bed that she didn't want to have anything to do with him. He was lying on the bed. He told himself that the girl had quite rightly called him a scumbag. The main character lying on the bed remembered that the doe constantly mentioned her teacher. He thought about it. He very realistically imagined himself next to the girl. The main character said in a thoughtful voice to the abbess that her personal student was also despised here. The protagonist glanced at his hand. He told the mentor to come out and help him if she was watching him. Mu sat on the bed. He said that in his past life, he relied on his physical strength and broke everyone in sight. But now he would have to raise the main characters wisely. The guy with the glowing eyes glanced to the side. He said to his girlfriends that he would feed them with everything he had. The protagonist looked dreamily ahead. He promised himself that he would feed those chosen by fate with everything possible. The boy suddenly felt weak. He developed a bloody cough. Mu thoughtfully told himself that he had greatly exhausted his body today. He remembered that the snowflowers he had given to the Huang and Ye family would wither in a couple of days. There was a magical flower on the table, surrounded by a bright green aura. Tian looked at the table with joy. She said that the lotus on the sparkling soil had suddenly come to life. Manting stood by the table and joyfully spread her arms. She said that Luguang soil is ideal for growing cold-weather plants. Qian happily replied to her partner that the Merchant Guild had found a remedy that could revive the snow lotus. The girl held the flower in her hands and looked at it carefully. She said in a sly voice that if the lotus had withered, she would have felt awkward after meeting Mu. Manting looked at the snow lotus carefully and with great slyness. She decided that the guy had given his girlfriend this flower as a symbol of love. Manton remembered that the guy gave her the same flower for business reasons. Huang glanced happily at the girl. She thought angrily that Chen would still think the flower was a gift and a symbol of love from the protagonist. This would be an excellent bargaining chip. Manting smiled happily to herself. She said that she would use all this to blackmail the protagonist into playing something bigger with her. The maid in the protagonist's house told him the latest news. She informed him that he shouldn't worry about the Bai family for now. Mu sat at the table and looked through papers. Wei reminded the guy that he asked her to get information about new students for him. She decided that he was eyeing a new target. The master explained to the maid that he wanted to prepare in advance for making friends. The companion reproachfully told the boy that he had already had enough of playing with Joshi. Mu accused his maid of having a very deep misunderstanding about him. Mu carefully studied the documents. He knew that tomorrow was the day of departure to the Sect. All the talents of the Eastern Province would be there. It would be an excellent opportunity to find a new lead. Mu carefully studied the documents. He felt that there were no key players among the candidates. Mu peered closely at the documents. He remembered young Mrs. Huang and the two sisters from the restricted area. Their life experiences seemed very smooth to him. In the world, those who resemble the protagonist most often begin their journey. Without parents or with physical disabilities, the protagonists of an evil path also begin by exterminating their entire family or being disdained by those around them. Mu looked with great attention at the biography of the third prince of the eastern province named Ling Long. In this world, the administrative system of secular cults and cultivating sects adheres to the principle of non-interference in each other's affairs. The imperial family rules the common people. The gates of the immortals are more like independent academic institutions. The imperial family, the Dakian, enjoys the highest title in the secular world. But within the Sect's domains, they must also abide by the rules. The protagonist carefully read the biography of the Nin Luna participant. Mu was delighted. He realized that a guy named Nin with such a backstory must definitely be the main character. A week after Lan took Ruaki to the Leani Sect, the youth of the eastern province all flew together on the Xuanniao bird. They went to the Sect. A huge magical bird flew over the endless waters. There were people on top of it. The main character ran above the bird's body. He called the third prince to him. Mu was delighted. He saw the right person in front of him. The third prince, Ling Long, called the protagonist by name. Ling Long looked closely at what was in front of him. He realized that the main character was standing in front of him. Mu looked happily at the third prince. He realized that he had finally found him. Mu carefully studied the third prince's body proportions. He decided that in front of him was the main character from the BL manga. The prince asked his partner, "Is he really young Master Mu?" The protagonist asked his partner, "Who is he?" Ling Long slyly told his partner that he should be ashamed not to know him. Ling Long explained to his partner in a stern voice that he was the third prince of the great Dakian state. After this, the third prince offered several compliments to the protagonist. Mu looked at his partner suspiciously. He didn't understand why he was so focused on him. The protagonist looked suspiciously at the third prince in front of him. He remembered that he himself was the master of lust. Mu thought sternly to himself that it was completely pure. 24 carats. I very realistically imagined that the prince was tall and thin. He greeted him. The protagonist glanced at the guy in front of him. He felt disgust towards him. Ling Long asked the protagonist, "Did he really come here to study at the Leani Sect too?" Mu replied to his partner that the palace was full of talented and extraordinary people. But for some reason, he too had come here to study at the Sect. Ling Long smiled at his partner and said that he hadn't had the opportunity to train in the previous palace. He decided to gain experience here. The prince approached the protagonist closely. He said they must have much in common to talk about. He suggested that his partner communicate like brothers. Mu looked at his partner with great displeasure. He was unhappy that the third prince had approached him. The girl extended her hand to the protagonist. Wei reminded the guy with a smile that he was supposed to entertain her the whole way. The maid turned around and apologized to the prince for interrupting their conversation. Ling Long smiled at the girl and said that he would still have a lot of time to talk with the main character. Wei smiled slyly at the young master and told him to follow her. He smiled happily and contentedly at the girl. He told her that he agreed. Lingxu watched the protagonist leave. She then called out to her sister. The older sister told the girl that she hadn't taken her eyes off the main character the whole way. She wanted to talk to her. Lingxu said in a dissatisfied voice that the main character might not be as vile as the rumors described him as. The main character walked next to his maid. They were humming something together. Suddenly the girl jerked her hand to the side. Mu looked at her in surprise. Mu reminded the girl in a disgruntled voice that they had agreed on their first trip together. Wei explained to her master with displeasure that she had merely helped save him from dealing with the prince. The maid asked the main character with displeasure why he was avoiding the prince. Mu replied to his partner with a smile that the third prince had some strange characteristics that were not mentioned in her investigation. Ling Long stood alone and looked ahead with great displeasure. The prince thoughtfully told himself that the state councilor's calculations might be wrong. He couldn't understand how a dissolute rich man from a distant city could be connected to the fate of the great Dakian. The magical bird flew 50 kilometers. Someone shouted that before them were the mountains of immortals of the Leani Sect. Mu stood next to his maid and looked down in surprise. He said with admiration that the domain of this immortal gate was very vast. The bird continued to fly high, with huge swirls in the water below it. The people on the bird looked down in surprise. They saw that the water below had begun to boil even more violently. The participants on top of the bird felt how strong water began to drip on them from all sides. The girl lost her grip on top and fell from a great height into the mud. She got up in fear. Lingshu rose from the mud in surprise. She didn't understand what was happening around her. The frightened participant saw a figure jump out of the mud right in front of her. The main character was completely covered in mud. He asked in surprise where he had ended up. The main character dove into the clear water of the waterfall to wash off the dirt. Mu was swimming in the waters of the waterfall. He emerged and washed the dirt off himself completely. The protagonist climbed ashore. He told the girl that it was very good that there was running water near them. Mu, he looked at his companion. He told her to go and tidy herself up. Lingshu sat on the ground, frightened. She said she wouldn't wash herself. There was just a little dirt on her. The girl explained to the guy in a frightened voice that even if she washed herself, her clothes would still get wet. Lingshu was surprised to see that the clothes on the guy across from her were completely dry. Mu smiled and explained to his partner that he knew a little about the quick-drying spell. The girl complained to the guy that he spent all his free time studying obscene tricks. Even with his family's resources, his personal cultivation had barely improved. Mu slyly told his partner to wash herself before she stepped onto the lands of the immortal gates. The main character cunningly promised the surprised girl that he would not follow her. He raised 2 fingers up. He told the girl with a smile that the oath was now in force. She could rest easy. Lingshu looked down in front of her with displeasure. She didn't know whether to believe the guy. The main character sat down on the ground. His companion stood next to him. The girl decided to take a dip in the water. To do this, she took off all her clothes. Lingshu threw off her outerwear next to the protagonist and landed on the ground. The participant stepped aside. She told the guy that the storm was caused by members of the Immortal Gate Sect. Mu turned away. He told his partner that he thought so too. The protagonist, looking away, told the girl that the Gate of the Immortals had previously dropped disciples at the foot of the mountain in various ways. Participants had to climb up on their own. Lingshu washed herself in the water. She told the boy that suppression spell formations had been installed along the mountain path. They caused various forms of exhaustion in people. The companion told the boy that there are also many formations or mechanisms in the mountains. They help new students enter. The protagonist approached the water. Without turning around, he suggested that they find a way to climb the mountain together. Lingshu stepped into the water. She told him she was fine with it. The girl, with great concern, told the protagonist not to tell anyone about today's incident. She especially didn't want her sister to find out about it. The main character slyly told the girl that she had gotten ahead of her sister and was swimming next to an interesting guy. Lingshu turned away with displeasure. She realized that the protagonist had dirt on her. The main character promised his frightened companion that he knew the world and would not tell anyone anything. He turned around and slyly asked the girl if he could ask her a question. The main character asked the girl why she had come all the way to the Lianyin Sect to become an ordinary student there. Lingshu sat silently and fearfully in the water. She didn't answer the guy. The girl was swimming in the water. The main character stood on the shore and looked at her. Mu looked at his companion in the water and thought about something of his own after that. The protagonist realized that his maid had missed details about the girl's family past in her investigation. The participant continued to swim in the water. She gradually became more and more calm. Lingshu rose from the water and grabbed her head with her hands. She closed her eyes. The girl rose naked above the water. She touched her body with her hands. Lingshu stood in the water. She looked carefully to the side and realized that someone was there. The frightened girl dived into the water. The protagonist stood on the shore and held her clothes in his hands. Lingshu jumped out of the water. She angrily shouted at the guy that he was a sick pervert. The girl suddenly jumped out of the water. She angrily cursed the protagonist. He stood calmly in front of the girl. He closed his eyes and held her clothes in his hands. The protagonist calmly demanded that his companion stand in front of him. Lingshu felt very embarrassed. She looked at the guy with great distrust. The girl stood up from the water and slowly walked towards the main character. Mu extended his hand forward over the surprised girl's head. A golden glow appeared around her. A surprised Lingshu looked at herself carefully. Her hair was immediately dry. The participant told the protagonist with surprise that her hair was soft, as if it had been styled. Mu handed the girl her clean clothes. The guy slyly asked his companion if she needed help with her clothes. Lingshu, frightened, answered the guy that she could handle it herself. The main character and the girl were walking along the mountain plains. Everything around was deserted. The surprised girl got dressed. She asked the guy why her clothes smelled. He explained to his partner that he had added a little of his family's special essential oil to her clothes. Lingshu looked at her clothes and said the smell was slight, but not unpleasant. Mu told his companion as they walked that he suggested she first find her younger sister. His partner responded to the guy with excitement. that they needed to figure out how to get up quickly. The protagonist looked carefully at the mountains. He asked the girl with interest if she heard anything. He listened carefully. He said he heard someone groan from the side. The protagonist and his companion entered the cave. Lingshu couldn't hear the groan. He asked the girl with displeasure, "Does she really think he has hearing problems?" The girl angrily reminded the guy that she was 2 years older than him. The boy called the girl "little sister" and invited her inside the cave. Perhaps an immortal destiny awaited them there. Lingshu angrily replied to her companion that she hadn't given him permission to call her that. The girl was walking ahead of the guy. She told him that something was happening in front of them. A warrior in blue clothes came out from the side. The main character and the girl stopped. Yeyu approached the girl with the main character. He angrily asked why they were here together. Lingshu explained to her partner with displeasure that she and the main character had fallen in the same place. Yu shouted angrily at the girl that a notorious criminal was standing next to her. He didn't want his sister to fall for the protagonist's tricks. Yeyu pointed his finger at the protagonist. He shouted that he had tricked their family into giving him the relic later. He had stolen his bride with the help of this relic. The fighter pointed his finger at the protagonist. He shouted that because of him, the hope for uniting the divided lands of the West and East had disappeared. Lingshu explained to her relative in a calm voice that she came to Tianxuan only for cultivation. The girl advised her relative not to blame others for his failures. Yeyu looked at his sister very angrily. He didn't answer her. Suddenly, a prince appeared inside the cave. He greeted the other participants. Nin told the protagonist with great surprise that they were able to meet in the big forest. Mu greeted the prince in return. He explained with a smile that he had accidentally encountered a girl from the Forbidden Zone. Nin explained that this cave had many exits. Mu and the prince looked at each other with great distrust. They couldn't understand how they could have gotten here. Ning used the state councilor's compass to get to this place. He couldn't believe the other participants had come here by chance. Yeyu thought to himself with displeasure that only people of his mentor's level could spot such a place with a hidden opportunity. The girl said to the guys next to her with displeasure that they needed to go further into the cave. The prince agreed with the participants' words. Yeyu chuckled discontentedly and said nothing. The warrior walked through the cave next to the prince. Each of them thought they had received a lucky opportunity. The protagonist cleverly thought that the prince and the warrior Yeyu had the opportunity to be the main characters. The main character and his companions approached the cave and the huge gates. The participant said in a frightened voice that she heard the voice that the main character heard outside. Lingshu asked the boy with great surprise, "Why is he the only one hearing this voice?" Mu explained to the girl with a smile that the stranger was calling him to help her sort out her problems. Yeyu couldn't figure out who in the energy pool could be calling the protagonist. He was also unhappy that the girl believed him. Suddenly, the magical gates opened, and a very dark aura came out of them. Suddenly, a huge mechanical monster appeared from the opened door above the people. The mechanical dragon opened its large mouth and prepared to pounce on the intruders. Mu looked up with great excitement. He realized that before him were mechanical golems. The mechanical golem inside the cave was flying above the people. It was screaming angrily. Lingshu looked up in surprise that she had encountered this even before enrolling. The artificial monster in flight glared angrily at the people below. He prepared to attack. The golem from above extended its huge paw and prepared to grab the man on earth. The prince raised his hands up in defense. Yeyu raised his hands up, and a blue magical dome appeared around them. He defended himself from the golem's claw. The protagonist stood next to his companion. Their companions were able to defend themselves from the predator's attack. Suddenly, someone's voice was heard from the cave. The protagonist and his companion listened. I realized with great excitement that I had heard the soul of the word within myself. The main character stood in the center of the cave. He continued to hear someone's magical voice from inside. He couldn't understand why exactly he heard the voice. He decided that the script was clearly wrong. The main character came to the conclusion that the secondary character must be saved by the hero. The girl frightenedly extended her hand to the guy and called him by name. Mu decided to himself that he was the main character. Lingshu suddenly extended her hand forward. She grabbed the protagonist by the clothes. The participant pressed herself against the guy. She told him in a weak voice that she couldn't return it. A small red beam appeared from inside the cave. After that, the doors suddenly slammed shut. Nin looked at the gate in the cave and realized that there was luck energy inside it. The girl was very scared. She pressed herself close to the main character. Mu looked around carefully. He thought there were many talismans in the mountain pass. He saw that they were all damaged. The guy and the girl fell to the ground. After that, he let out a dissatisfied cry. The girl was lying on top of the guy. she said in a weak voice that they had finally stopped. Mu replied to his partner that he hadn't realized there was a cave under the mountain near the Gate of the Immortals. The protagonist lay on the floor and looked away. He told his frightened companion that there could be a lair of evil here. Mu looked back in front of him attentively. He saw someone's red eyes glowing in the darkness opposite him. Suddenly, a huge dragon with red eyes appeared in the room. It flew straight at the people. Lingshu jumped away from the guy. She told him with concern that things were bad. The dragon with glowing eyes opened its mouth wide and began to attack people. The girl activated the magical pentagram. She erected a protective blue shield against the monster. Lingshu barely maintained her defense. She told the boy in a weak voice that the dragon had great exhalation force. He stood next to his companion. He told her in a weakening voice to throw it on her head. The dragon opened its mouth even wider to attack further than the people. Mu told his companion under the protective shield that the predator had no evil intentions. The girl couldn't understand how she could abandon her friend. The guy could have died. After a short pause, the protagonist quietly whispered to the girl that she could do it. He called her little sister. Lingshu was overjoyed that the boy called her little sister. She stretched out her hands and shouted at him that she would try her best. The protagonist stood next to his companion. There were protective blue circles on the floor around them. The dragon extended its paw forward. Blue sparkling circles appeared around it. Lingshu grabbed the guy's side with her arm and prepared to launch him forward. The girl jumped high into the air and pushed the guy forward. She shouted at him to fly faster. Mu flew at full speed right up to the dragon. After that, he kissed him. The demonic predator was frightened by the human's kiss. He jumped back in confusion. Mu pressed his lips to the dragon's muzzle. The predator didn't understand what was happening. The protagonist felt very embarrassed. He continued kissing the magical dragon. After the kiss, he pushed the demonic predator away from himself with his hands. The main character jumped back sharply and flew back. Behind him was a frightened girl. Mu landed on the floor. He told his surprised companion that the dragon hadn't been evil to them. The demonic predator stretched out on the ground. He looked calmly at the people and growled softly. A giant cave dragon kidnapped the protagonist and Ye Ling Xuan. Only Ye Yu and Ling Long remained outside. The elder told the fighters that they needed to find a way to climb the mountain. The man explained to his partners with displeasure that they had come to a place where ordinary students were forbidden to enter. The elder pointed to the cave entrance. He explained to the participants that there was an illusion outside and they couldn't get inside. The humans activated the mechanical dragon but couldn't enter the gate, so they hadn't caused much trouble. The prince calmly explained to the man that 2 people had managed to get inside. The elder was very surprised when he heard such words from the prince. At that moment, a dragon jumped out of the cave. The man was very surprised when he saw a demonic predator flying around him. He screamed loudly. The warrior and the prince were very frightened. They looked at the flying dragon in amazement. The Leani Sect elder named Yi Wu said with alarm that Lady Ling Long's karmic fire had still not subsided. He didn't understand how she had gotten out. The man shouted to the disciples on the mountain that Madame Ling Long was heading up towards them. The other elders needed to be called to take protective measures. A huge and predatory dragon flew out of the mountain and flew around it. The white-robed disciples looked at the flying predator in surprise. Someone said that Mrs. Ling Long had not left the cave for a very long time. The dragon flew high in the sky. People were sitting above it. The doe turned around and told the students to be on guard. Lady Ling Long's mental state was still uncertain. One of the students shouted to the teacher in a frightened voice that someone was sitting on Ling Long's head. The main character and the girl were sitting on the dragon's head. They landed on a mountain platform. The demonic predator landed next to the people. Doe stood next to the disciples. They greeted Miss Ling Long. The dragon roared joyfully. Mu and the girl thanked the mentor. The doe asked the main character with great excitement what had happened. Mu hid behind his frightened girlfriend. He said that together with the girl, they were able to ease the dragon's pain. The guy came up and cheerfully asked the surprised dragoness if she was the eldest. The white dragon joyfully opened her mouth and screamed very cheerfully. The students were very amazed. It was the first time they had seen newcomers fly up the mountain on the back of Mrs. Ling Long. The girl felt very embarrassed by the attention. She approached the guy and told him in a shy voice that it wasn't her fault. He slyly explained to the girl that he couldn't tell anyone that he was forced to kiss the precious dragon. A system window appeared next to the boy. He realized he had received a notification. From now on, he became a companion of the Children of Destiny. His level was 100th. The students were joyful. The protagonist couldn't understand why his reward was incomparable to the one he had received before with Josie. Mu looked away thoughtfully. He realized that there were some mechanisms for determining the reward that he didn't yet know about. Mu asked the girl, "Where are the other newcomers?" The doe answered the guy that the newcomers were already on their way. The protagonist asked his mentor in surprise, "Were he and his girlfriend the only two of them who climbed the mountain?" The doe replied that it was true. He asked his partner to take him somewhere to relax. The dragon flew high in the sky above the earth. The boy thought to himself with displeasure that the doe teacher was very taciturn in public places. The teacher walked with the students through the area where the student dormitories were located. She told the guests that all the rooms were available. They could take anyone they wanted. Lan told the guests that when the other newcomers arrived, she would call them. Lingshu wished her mentor to take care of herself. The protagonist and his companion were inside the room. The boy was surprised by the Sect's followers' high regard for the dragoness. Lingshu explained to her companion that the disciples had named the predator Ling Long. Mu cunningly asked his partner to tell him about Ling Long, the girl. Smiling, told the guy that this creature was equal in age to the Sect leader. The protagonist told his surprised companion that they could be kicked out for insulting Ling Long and attacking her on the first day. Suddenly, a very loud scream was heard from the side. The guy and girl inside the room were very scared. A dragon with blue horns grabbed a helpless bird with its teeth. The bird screamed loudly and frightened. Ling Long smiled maliciously and joyfully at the main character and his girlfriend. He grabbed the frightened bird in his hand. The girl next to him screamed. The protagonist looked at the dragon in surprise and asked, "Is her name really Ling Long?" His partner smiled happily at the guy and shouted, "He was holding a bird in his hands." He explained to the girl that he didn't understand why she brought him a crane. Mu asked the girl with a smile, "Does she really want him to cook crane food for her?" The little dragon growled joyfully at the guy. The guy looked around and said there was no kitchen equipment around. Ling Long continued smiling at people and shouting something. Ling Long looked at the people. She told them in a clear voice to follow her. The main character and his girlfriend felt the space around them shake after the girl's words. The companion became agitated. She reached out her hand and grabbed the protagonist's hand. Mu calmed the girl down. He said that they had just heard a word that becomes law. When a word becomes law, everything said becomes reality. Mu explained to the surprised girl that if the dragon had said he had reached the level of spiritual forging, it would have entailed great karma. Lingshu looked happily at the contented dragon. At first she thought that Ling Long couldn't speak, but it turned out that she simply couldn't. Ling Long waved her hand in the room. Furniture began to appear around her. He glanced to the side in surprise. He saw that a kitchen and dining area had appeared in the room. The dragon waved her arms happily and looked at the guy. Mu told his partner that he would cook crane and sauce for her. Mu prepared a delicious meat dish and placed it on the table in front of the girl. Ling Long sat at the table, happily and greedily consuming the delicious meat dish. The protagonist looked ahead happily. He was pleased that the girl appreciated his cooking. Lingshu was very surprised when she realized that the guy really knew how to cook. Mu called his companion sister and said that for his family, all this was commonplace. The girl reminded the guy with surprise that he had already called her sis many times. He replied to his partner that it all happened unconsciously. Lingshu turned away. She told the boy in a displeased voice that given his age, all of this was in principle possible. The dragon sat at the table. She was very happy and ate the meat from the plate with gusto. She asked the guy how he had corrected the situation with the karmic fire on Ling Long. Mu explained to his partner that some beings have a special constitution. Their bodies automatically absorb heavenly luck. The accumulated luck circulates and accumulates in the body. It turns into the fire of karma and can cause severe pain. Mu told the girl that the Leani sect had installed purifying talismans in the cave to help ease the pain of karmic fire along the way. He saw that all the talismans had already been destroyed, so he sacrificed himself and helped the demonic predator absorb the excess good fortune. Mu asked the girl at the table with a smile if she was Ling Long's eldest. The little dragon happily gave the boy a thumbs up. Lingshu told the protagonist in a thoughtful voice that Lady Ling Long knew he could help her, and so she specifically called him. She didn't understand how a low-level essence refining cultivator could do such a thing. The main character looked at the girl silently and slyly. He didn't know what to say to her. After a short pause, the main character answered his companion that all this was a secret. The protagonist smiled slyly at the girl. He said his physique could be dangerous to others. He wanted to first explore the depths of Ling Xuan's sister. The dragon happily waved her hand at the boy and screamed. Mu explained to his companion that Ling Long was offering them some crane meat too. Lingsun said in a dissatisfied voice that she would not eat the valuable meat. She did not help in any way. The dragon ran up and held out a piece of meat to the surprised girl in her hand. Ling Long joyfully shouted something to herself. The protagonist explained to his friend that she had managed to briefly suppress the dragon, who was at the Dao fusion level, using her qi cultivation. Ling Shun was very surprised when she realized that their new acquaintance was at the Dao fusion level. If a Dao fusion level cultivator released a suppressive aura, a qi cultivation level cultivator wouldn't even be able to kneel. But Ye Lingxuan was actually able to momentarily suppress a Dao fusion level grandmaster who had lost his composure. Lingsun thought very happily that the little dragon had the same level as her father. The protagonist turned away. He saw a system window appear before him. He had reached the first level of the Children of Destiny companion. Mu happily thought to himself that he had successfully increased his level. The key to triggering the system's reward was the protagonist's self-identification. There was a very bright explosion in the system window. The congenital vessel began to expand. The owner read in the window that he now had several magazines for his gun. He was delighted with this improvement. The dragon came up to the guy from the side and spread her arms out to the side. Mu explained to his companion that the dragon wanted to say that Lingshu had something good that could be used. Ling Long extended her hand forward towards the surprised girl and launched a bright beam of light. Lingshu was very surprised when she saw that a bright stream was going into her body. The girl found herself inside a huge protective bubble. She looked around in surprise and saw that she was inside the pill that the protagonist had created during the alchemy competition. Mu reminded the girl that she wanted to feed his defective pill to the dogs. Lingsui was very surprised. She looked ahead with a startled gaze. The girl felt very uncomfortable. She barked softly inside her protective shell. The protagonist looked at the girl carefully. He thought that even if Lingsu wasn't the main character, he would definitely imbue her with power and make her the main character. Mu slyly told the girl that on that day he had ordered the elder Zhenya to throw all the medicinal herbs from the estate into a mortar and grind them. Perhaps one or more of the components resonated with the girl. Mu told his partner in a cunning voice that the progress that would be achieved with the help of Senior Ling Long and the pill would be related to other factors. A bright glow appeared around the boy. The protagonist told Dracosha that Ling Xuan could meditate in this space for a while longer. He asked Ling Long to send only him back. The protagonist rose high into the air. Above him was a very dark green swirl. Suddenly, the guy fell over and started falling. At the last moment, he thought that there was no such thing as a soft landing in comedies. He opened his eyes with displeasure. He realized that someone had entered the room, and he fell on the guest. The protagonist was very surprised. He saw Qian lying on the floor below. The guest told the guy in a frightened voice that Sister Teacher had told her he was here. Josie ran up to the door from the side. She joyfully shouted to the protagonist that Sister Mentor had informed him that he was in this room. He smiled very calmly at his girlfriend and immediately greeted her. A frightened Qian lay on the floor below. She looked at Ruaki with displeasure. A girl was walking down the street near the student dormitory. She said, dissatisfied with herself, that there were plenty of free rooms around. Her teacher only allowed her to rest in one. The girl approached the open doors and looked inside. She didn't understand why they were open. Manting looked into the room in surprise. She saw the protagonist and Qian there. She realized the guy had been caught cheating. Josie was very unhappy. She looked at her friend with an angry, burning gaze. He couldn't understand how the girls knew he was in this room. The guy decided that the teacher had called them all here. The main character in such an awkward situation could shout to his girlfriend that all this is not what she thinks. At such a difficult moment, Josie had already made up her mind. Words of denial didn't seem to help against the established order. Such an answer could have put Qian, who had sympathy for the main character, in an awkward position. The girls knew the main character had a low moral compass, but they maintained a relationship with him. After a brief moment of reflection, the boy realized he couldn't give a definitive answer under any circumstances. He looked ahead in fear and decided he needed to find a way out of this situation. He extended his hands to the girl and helped her up. He asked her, "How did she end up here?" Mu glanced at the girls in the doorway. He thought it was wonderful to have strangers around, but for him, a Manting would do. The protagonist knew that Manting was very smart. When she saw this scene, she would immediately understand his situation. The guy looked closely at the girl in the doorway. He hoped that she would now do him a small favor. Manting abruptly walked through the door. She told the young master with surprise that she had found him. The girl slyly handed the flower to the guy. She said that she wanted to return this snow lotus to him. The protagonist looked at his guest in fear. He realized that his plan had failed. Manting held the flower in her hands. She thought angrily to herself that the guy hadn't been able to use her as a tool. The guest thought happily to herself that he would be rejected by his girlfriend. The protagonist noticed that the flower in the girl's hands was in good condition. He knew that a snow lotus doesn't last more than a week after being picked. Qian pulled out a flower from a box on the side. She told the guy with displeasure that he had given snow lotus to other people too. Mu was surprised that the flower in the second friend's hands was also intact. Manting extended her hand to the side. She told the surprised girl in an angry and cunning voice that all the snow lotuses come from young Master Mu. The guest held the flower to her face. She said in a sly voice that the guy had complimented her a lot. Manton slyly asked her partner if the main character had said the same things to her. He felt very frightened and irritated. He realized that the girl was being very dramatic. Josie reminded the guy in a tearful voice that he told her that the snow lotus symbolizes fidelity and purity of love. Qian looked at the protagonist very silently and with displeasure. Mu waited for the girl to say a few more words. After a short pause, Josie calmed down and wanted to say something to her friend. She told the protagonist that she understood him very well. The guy not long ago was still a well-known womanizer throughout the area. The girl slyly told the guy that she wouldn't hate him because of such trifles. He was glad when he heard these words. Josie looked angrily at the guy. She asked him, "Who exactly does the White Lotus look like?" The main character was frightened by the girl's question. He didn't know what to answer her. Mu stood in the center of the room and remained silent, surrounded by girls. Josie demanded that her friend say something. Ye Yu was passing by the door and heard a conversation inside. He stopped and was glad to hear about the protagonist's problems. The fighter was eavesdropping near the door. He was glad that now everyone would know the main character's vile nature. Mu came to his senses. In a didactic voice, he told the girls that the snow lotus is located on the high mountains. The flower symbolizes coldness and inaccessibility. The guy looked closely at the girls he knew. He analyzed their character. After a short pause, the protagonist said that the snow lotus was the most suitable for Miss Bai. After his words, Mu turned his gaze and looked closely at Qian next to him. Ye Yu stood near the door and was delighted to hear such words from the protagonist. Joxie said in a calm voice that she knew Mu would say that. The girl told her partners in an angry voice that she had been practicing duel cultivation with the main character. She had studied every part of his body. Ling Sui and Xian were very surprised when they heard such words from Ruaki. The protagonist was very angry when he heard such words from the girl. Ye Yu was also dissatisfied.